is Shane, who I didn't think had a newfound interest in government when he showed up today. My husband and partner in crime, thank you for your unwavering support of me and the work I do. I wouldn't be as productive or amazing without you. Thank you for covering me in my blanket of solitude when you can tell I'm tired after a long day. And thank you for creating those stellar spreadsheets in Excel that you know I totally take credit for. It's a good thing my coworkers don't know how to read the author information or I would be totally busted. Thank you for spending your nights, weekends, and holidays coming down to the center to move furniture, hang holiday decorations, haul files from the upstairs to the downstairs, only to haul them back upstairs at a later date, and so much more. And finally, to my 3 children, Shane, David, and Heather, who have put more sweat equity and hard labor into the CJC than some people on the payroll. Thank you guys for always being willing to be bribed with So Delicious to help clean the center or haul things up and down the stairs. You may not know now, but one day I hope you realize how much of an impact your acts of service at such a young age have made not only on me, but the center itself. Also, I know you guys think I spend my days making copies, chastising law enforcement officers who break the recording equipment, typing, and sitting in a hallway being pretty. And while I do all those things, this little piece of paper proves I do so much more. Thank you.
Thank you. I love it. Sure appreciate you and the hard work you put in there, and also all of the CJC. You do an incredible job for the children and families that are victims of abuse in our county, and just phenomenal work that they do over there.
I don't know how next month's going to top that.
Yes. So forewarning for next month, you better bring your speech, right? Yep. All right. At this point in time, we will go ahead and go through the process of building our agenda. As you've looked at our agenda, it is rather significantly large. We have 42 items currently listed on the consent agenda, along with 23 items on our regular agenda, along with 3 work session items. For procedural purposes, to help you understand, all items will be considered moved to consent unless they are specifically held by one of the commissioners for discussion and review. Items moved to consent are considered approved unanimously. At the end of establishing the consent item, I will give opportunity for public comment if anyone wishes to comment on an item that was moved to consent. On items that are held for further discussion, there will be opportunity for public comment. Following the completion of our entire agenda, we also will have opportunity for additional public comment on general nature. With that, we will go ahead and begin the process, and I will make one note, primarily because I know we'd received several emails. If you look at our regular agenda, we have a host of agricultural protection area renewals. There was one particular area dealing with the Dixon Farm that will be discussed next week. And so it would not be on our agenda today. So if you did show up for that one, it's actually next week. But I just wanted to make sure that was clear for anyone who might have attended based on some of the emails we'd received on those ag protections. With that, looking at consent, I did have one item that I wanted to hold for discussion, and that was consent agenda item number 36 concerning the Freedom Festival. Any other consent items that need to be held?
Not that we need to hold 29, but we generally make mention of the hazardous household waste collection.
Okay.
So call everybody's attention to that on April 14th over at the Provo Town Center.
Over at the Provo Town Center. Ralph or Richard, would you maybe just want to address that real briefly? We could probably, if you're okay, would you do that now where it's up?
Sure. Right now?
Yeah. That way we don't skip over it.
Well, each year we try to give the citizens of Utah County an opportunity to bring some of their household hazardous waste in for free disposal. It's really a cooperative agreement with us and the local solid waste districts to provide that service. The only thing difference this year is that we won't be taking electronic waste at this particular day event, but there'll be a two-week period that they can drop those off at the transfer stations. They're just so bulky, it kind of fills up all the bins and we can't get everything in that we need to get in. And so that's the only change. But the Provo Town Center always cooperates with us on this event, and you know, the people are able to get in and out pretty quickly on this. So, and then the schools cooperate and provide us with volunteers to help with the event as well. So.
Ralph, will you kind of run down a little bit of a list of things that you typically see so that people have an idea of what you accept?
Often there'll be a lot of paint, insecticides, batteries, things like just things that they, you know, cleaners, things that they have in their house that they don't want to go into the regular landfill. There's always a list that's on the website, and we send out to the cities. The cities send out in their letters to the citizens. And so it's a cooperative effort between just everybody, basically, that helps with this. And then also, as Richard would tell you, it's an opportunity to also dispose of any prescription drugs that they have that they want to get rid of at that time. So we provide that service at the same time.
Perfect. Thank you, Ralph.
All right, thank you.
That. Okay, so any additional items on consent that you'd like to hold for discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will then hold 36 for discussion. Moving to our regular agenda, I would like to hold for discussion regular agenda item number 2, primarily for the report from the Division of Wildlife Resources. I would like to see regular agenda item number 8 held for additional discussion.
There was a request to continue number 7.
Okay.
Or just 1 week till he's back.
Right, for 1 week.
Okay, so we will continue regular agenda item number 7 for 1 week. I'd like 8, discussion on 8. I have numbers 14 and 15 to be held for additional discussion. Those were the ones I had. Any additionals?
15.
Commissioner Grave has
Do
none.
we need to make any, on the agricultural protection, do we need to make any
Findings.
Findings?
do we have to officially kind of move that? I mean, we can do it on consent. Can we do it on consent?
You could do it on consent. It's just an initial review today. If you don't take any action on those ag protection areas, they will automatically renew for another 20 years. Not necessarily today, but during the time frame. So, yep. If you don't take any action this calendar year, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
And that's kind of, today is your opportunity to look at those and decide whether you want to have the full-blown hearing, which means that we would send it back to Planning Commission, back to Ag Protection Board for recommendations, and then come back to you for review. My understanding on the ones that are on their agenda today, there have been no complaints received. And under our code what you adopted last year, if there are 5 complaints received by in the last 3 years, then they're automatically, you have to review them. So besides that, you do not.
None of these had any.
And yep, and the state statute changed, I think it was last year, to allow for us to do this process, right, essentially.
Okay.
One other thing, my understanding is there may be you need to hold number 5. Is that, if Mr. Jones may want to discuss that real quick.
Paul, if you'd like.
Thank you. Paul Jones from the County Attorney's Office. On number 5, I'm still working, we're still working through an issue on parcel 92630. If you could just pull that parcel out, and I think everything else would probably be fine to
Okay.
move forward.
So we could move 5 to consent, withholding parcel 92630.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Is there any objections to that?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I noted. All right, I appreciate that. All right, are there any general comments to items that are on the consent agenda or regular agenda that were moved to consent?
Good morning, Commissioners. Peggy Kelsey from Community Development Staff. I just wanted to make sure that I think there are a number of audience members who are own property in the ag protection areas, and this would be their opportunity to speak about those. They were on consent, which means they will be continued for another 20 years, and if they don't, I just wanted to be able to invite them that they could leave.
Yeah, that's a great clarification. So if there are any that would like to comment on that, you're welcome at this time. Otherwise, congratulations on another 20 years of farming in Utah County, and thank you for your service.
My name is Robert McMullen. Do you need my address, or am I, okay. We farm in the south end of the county, McMullen Orchards, and we also have a farm down on Lincoln Beach, South Shore Farms. We very much appreciate this ag protection zone, appreciate having that in our, let's see, how shall I put it? It's just good to have a tool that helps us farm. So just wanted to tell you thank you, and hopefully it'll go on through. Thanks.
Sterling Brown with Utah Farm Bureau. Thank you for a moment or two. I too want to speak in behalf of supporting the renewal of these agriculture protection areas. The creation of these ag protection areas is an important public declaration, we believe, that the county and the landowners consider agriculture as an important to the economic and environmental well-being of the community and a viable industry in a specific area. And there's, over the years, you commissioners know from your own public service as well as others that have gone before you that there have been a number of county task forces and committees. There's been a number of state task forces and committees that have looked at how we can preserve the sustainability of production agriculture. And I don't think it's a secret in this group that Utah County is the leading county in the state. It alternates from over the years from 1 and number 2 in the most agriculture cash receipts. And if I remember right, Utah County is also the leading growing state, or 1 or 2 in the state. What a phenomenal that is, if you can manage both industries, both realities at the same time. So we stand behind the creation of ag protection areas for those reasons I articulated earlier, and also the renewal of these agriculture protection areas to keep sustainable agriculture a viable, sustainable component to the economy of Utah County. So thank you.
Thank you. And just echoing that, I believe that Utah County has the most acres in ag protection of any county in the state.
That's my understanding.
That's right.
No. And thank you to the legislature and the efforts of Commissioner Lee and others. We just saved the taxpayers a whole bunch of money today because there was no objection to these being renewed, and because they go through a simple renewal process, we've saved tens to hundreds of thousands in taxpayer dollars and notifications. So,
And staff hours.
and staff and everything.
I'm Kenyon Farley. I also farm in the south end of Utah County in the fruit business, and I don't know where 20 years just went, but I remember doing this 20 years ago, and enjoyed the benefits of being in agricultural protection. It's helped us a time or two in the middle of the night with neighbors that didn't like us spraying, and it was nice to have the peace officers at least know that they had an answer for the irate neighbors. But for the most part, it's been good to be a part of ag protection. I appreciate you renewing it for another 20 years. And hopefully somebody will be here to be grateful for that in 20 years. I'm not sure I will, but thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any additional comment on those or other items moved to consent?
Can I make one comment, Mr.
You
Chair?
bet.
This is the first time that we're going through this process, and I just wanted to note that when we changed it last year, so most of the time you have to go through the entire process, but it was changed at the state legislature, which gave us the opportunity on those that you're in right now with no complaints, and they seem to be the ones that sail through, in which we can just put them on a consent agenda like we are. It's on consent right now to be approved and initiated for the next 20 years without going through the entire process. So that's where we're at. These are on consent. They will go through, and you'll have the next 20 years as what's been stated. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and see you in 20 years, I guess, is what it is.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lee, you may want to add that it was because of this county that that change happened at the state level too.
Yeah, it was, we worked with our legislators to get that change so that we could go through this process cleaner and what we're going through now instead of going through it differently, so.
Significant, it's always nice when government operates
looks
more,
like-
more efficiently.
Does Eldon want to come up?
I was gonna say, we can't let
Oh, is he
Elton leave
just
without a
left?
comment, can we?
Oh.
Okay.
I was hoping you'd ask me to.
Always.
Eldon Neves with, in Palmyra. I was thinking that Eldon Money, he was the one that put this thing, Senator Money. I stopped by to pick him up and somebody else had picked him up before that, but he was the one that put that through this state, I think. And right now, the Money Protection Agency has, or area has 5,500 acres under that, which I think is the largest one. But it is a great thing. Years ago when we tried to prevent the transfer station from coming into the community, that was what prevented that from happening. Appreciate you, and thanks for inviting me up.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Always. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no additional comment, we'll go ahead and move to consent agenda item number 36. This is concerning the county sponsorship of the Freedom Festival, which takes place every year in Orem and Provo particularly. I'm going to preface why I wanted to hold this for consent, to have a little additional dialogue. One of the greatest concerns I have as an elected official is the extraordinary high rate of suicide in Utah. Some statistics have us at about 160% higher than the national average. It's astounding. There's a host of reasons why. There's one particular subset or group within our community that faces an even higher suicide rate. And those are our teens and young adults that identify with the LGBT community. It's heartbreaking. And last year, the Freedom Festival Parade admitted a wonderful organization called Encircle, which has taken on cultural stereotypes and broken them down and offered a safe place for kids who are at high risk. As someone whose own life has been affected by suicide, when I see people who are courageous, who embrace life and freedom and take steps with their own money to reach out to highly susceptible groups, I think those are organizations that should have light shine upon them. And unfortunately, after being told they would be allowed to participate and going through the preparation and the excitement, this group of kids had to face the fact that they were kicked out of the parade at the last minute. It was wrong, and I found it very offensive. Because to me, this is the type of group that embodies what we are as Americans, and that is, as Americans, we are a melting pot where different religions, cultures, ideas can come together and live in harmony and celebrate those differences in a spirit of unity. And when I look at an organization that's publicly funded and that happens, I'm definitely not of an inkling to continue to fund that unless there are significant changes made to the way those situations are handled. And that's why I wanted to hold this for discussion today, in part because when I reviewed it, our contract, there were a couple parts that were still a little concerning to me, particularly in the rules and procedures section on the right to refuse participation. And it still feels a little vague to me, and I just want to make sure that we are not going to have a repeat of what happened last year. That's why I wanted to hold this for discussion.
Well, it's not publicly funded. It is true that they do seek donations. The money that is being moved potentially for them that they've been using is what's called the TRCC and the TRT. It's been well documented over the years that the reason that we paid the $113,000, and it's actually only $103 because $10,000 goes to Colonial Festival. But the $103,000 that they get, they more than contribute back into the community. And how that is by them bringing in more than 50% of the people that come to the Freedom Festival are from outside Utah County and come and participate. And when they fill up with their cars, or they come and stay at hotels for this event, or they come go to KFC on their way in the stadium, or whatever, any of those things, that keeps regenerating the tax. And this, it's hard to calculate, but the calculations are somewhere over $30 million to $40 million of economic impact that just the one day brings, let alone the whole thing. And again, that's just based on their survey. So I don't disagree with what you said at first. Where I have a problem is I just always have a problem when government starts telling people how and what to run a privately held organization. And even the threat of withholding funds for that, I think there's other and better ways potentially, but.
And for Paul, this is a fantastic event for our county. Economically brings in tons of money for those, and I think that our hotels and our restaurants appreciate that as well as they come flooding in here. Plus, it's a great celebration for freedom. But also, and we went to lunch and I talked with Paul and others. And I too have some concerns, and I'm not necessarily with the same group that Commissioner Ivey has spoken of. I had it from a different angle. I had repeated calls, which I called Paul, and we had some conversation, and so we had a lunch in which we kind of bantered some of these through for some ideas on what we could do, because we are public entities, and with public money going into a process like this, I think we do have a certain amount of responsibility to make sure that it goes in a direction that allows for as many as possible. I realize we can't have a parade that's 20 miles long. There's got to be some sort of limitations to it. I'm not sure what that limitations or where they come about or how that happens. And that's kind of the discussion that we had. There is, I'm looking at the rules and procedures right now, and I'm wondering if Paul, if it would be all right if we were to maybe delay this for 1 week and just have a little bit further conversation on some of the specifics, the 1 through 3 on the procedures and policies. Could we do that?
Yeah, I don't have any problems with having further conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
If you want me to respond, I'm happy.
Sure.
Yeah,
you're more than
absolutely.
welcome
We'd love to hear from you. And again, I want to make it expressly clear, I love the festival. I support the efforts and the great things that you bring to the community. I just want to make sure that we're moving forward in a direction that's unifying and inclusive. That's,
well, and maybe I can
that's
put it
my
this,
point
maybe I can
there.
put it this way on the rules and processes here. Whenever I play a game, I like to know what the rules are, right? If you touch the line, are you out? Or if you have to cross the whole line, like in basketball. I know you play basketball.
Right.
But in this one here, the 1 through 3 seems pretty general. And I don't know if people who would want, I'm wondering if we shouldn't make it a little bit more specific so the rules are.
And I'm not sure
designed.
what your specific desire is, but.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, like, for me, part of it.
Memorized, no.
Part of it, yeah, and that's, so like in 3, it mentions the executive committee also reserves the right to refuse an entry into the parade if it, in its sole judgment, it determines that the entry is controversial, unlawful, obscene, vulgar, defamatory, offensive to local community standards, or otherwise considered to be inconsistent with the standards, theme, quality, or purpose of the Freedom Festival. And for me, that gets pretty broad and objective, like, what is controversial?
Well, and we've had, just so that we can be open here, we've probably had 40 or 50 entries that we've refused over the last 3 years because we have no desire for the parade to become an issue parade. We want to celebrate the 4th of July. And we want to do it in a way where everybody along the parade route can say, hip hip hooray. I'm glad I'm an American. I appreciate the fact that somebody stood up in 1776 and said, we're going to not do this anymore. And so we don't want the parade to become an issue parade where all the entries have to do with a certain specific item or issue that, because we could have a parade that's just filled with those kinds of things. And we want the floats and the bands and everything to just have us want to put our hand over our heart and say, I really do pledge allegiance to the United States of America. And so it's been a difficult thing. And you know that we admitted we made a mistake last year. And we've met with Encircle on 3 or 4 different occasions. We've invited them to participate as volunteers for this coming parade. And their board is looking at that. I've had conversations with one of their board members on several occasions with long discussions on how this can work so that it doesn't become an issue-related situation when the parade takes place. So we are making every effort to do that. Last year was an unusual situation, as I've explained to you before, in terms of how it happened, and it would have been a major issue in the parade had it gone the way they asked it to go last year. And I don't think any of you would have wanted what was planned. But that being said, we think we've made the extension of our hand and our desire to say, let's join together. And from everything we can determine, that's what they'd be willing to do this year.
Well, I'd like to kind of, because we, you, me, Commissioner Lee, and Steve were at the same lunch when we discussed these. And the other thing that this is a slippery slope that Commissioner Ivy's talking about. And again, I am very sensitive to the situation because I helped participate in the concert and bringing that concert here that group was a major part of. And I mean Encircle. Right. But the reality is the Freedom Festival also blocks all campaigning, all people running for offices and stuff like that. And the thing is where we have public funds, I mean, all of a sudden, if we start changing their rules and dictating how they do it, all of a sudden the question is do we get back into it and say, well, now it can only become Republicans or it can only be Democrats, and now we're using county funds to facilitate campaigns. And again, it starts to be a slippery slope, and that's part of the conversation we had there, which is why, we hope you guys will continue to find ways to include everybody while maintaining the values of Utah County and celebrating freedom.
Yeah, and as you say that, one of the issues that, do you want it to have gun control people running up and down? That's one of the issues we're dealing with now. I mean, you get all these requests for those kinds of things, and again, the board of the Freedom Festival, that's not what we see the parade being. And so we really appreciate what Encircle's trying to do with save those young people from committing suicide. We agree, we wholeheartedly agree with their mission. But the other thing, you start allowing that, then which gun control side you're going to let march down the parade route? What other kind of thing is going to come up in the future that we can't even anticipate at this point? Are you just going to have to say you're all in? And that's the thing. We've spent hours and hours in discussion on this. I want you to know that we've taken this very seriously. So,
I was back in D.C. and we had a group come and they performed and they said something that was interesting. I'll preface it with this. We usually put out there when we're doing employment, we say equal opportunity employer, right? Equal opportunity employer. Here's the rules, here's the policies and procedures. But they said something different. They were performing to us and they said we are an equal opportunity offender. And they were talking about political parties, and they offended every political party that was out there. And so I think that it's just an interesting statement that they would say it like that, because we're trying to take it the other way, equal opportunity employer. And we know what the rules are, we kind of know what the bounds are, and that's why I was just kind of wondering if we shouldn't say, at their sole judgment, the 1 through 3. And I realize you don't have them all memorized and right in front of you, but if we had it defined and said, okay, here's what it is, and it doesn't matter where you're at. We're an equal parade participant you know, so it's all in there. We either offend everybody that says, well, you're out because you're out according to these rules. It doesn't matter who it is or what's going on. Or you're in because you followed the rules and procedures just like everybody else.
Yeah, I think, it's a difficult thing. You know better than anybody how hard it is to get the wording to be exact.
Sure.
Yes.
That controls, and if you're specifically just wanting to do it so that particular group is involved, I think that's already there, because it's just like we've already done, extended an invitation. Steve Schallenberger and I went and met with the director of Encircle. We issued to them an offer, an invitation for this year to participate as volunteers and to wear their Encircle shirts. And that's really a desire to have them there without it becoming an issue, but for them to be able to participate and to celebrate the 4th of July.
And I appreciate that. And I'll just be blunt with you. My concern and my internal wrestle is I recognize the source of this funding is specifically from tourism tax money, but that's tax money, right? We levy a tax on the people that come to this county, and so it's public money that we're giving you. And when I'm giving public money, I have a hard time if it's not a you're all in. And I love what the Freedom Festival does, but when it's not all in, and my task is to represent everyone in the county of 600,000 people, that becomes very internal struggle for me on trying to decide what's the right thing to do. That's why I wanted to have the discussion today, to look at these, to make sure that we were getting somewhere with that.
And when you say all in, I mean, what's all in?
And that's the question. And for me, and this is where these particular items for me get tricky, because I'm tasked with picking and choosing to some degree, right? And I hate that, because who do I include? Who do I include in? Who do I not include in? This is the same battle that you would have objectively there. It becomes very much an internal struggle in trying to decipher there. And for me, I personally don't have a problem with the anti-gun group in there, or the NRA in there, or opposing different churches or different things like that, because for me, and this is me speaking personally, that's the beauty of America, is this capacity to have differing ideas but all come together and celebrate. And so for me, that's where it gets a little struggling. And I recognize we live in a very polarized political climate, and I hate that climate because I think it's wrong. Because I think we should be able to share ideas and thoughts and beliefs and values and still be friends at the end of the day. And I wonder if we can't find a way for the parade to embrace that. And that's a bigger philosophical question. And it's one that I wanted to have the discussion on.
Yeah, it changes the whole nature of the parade if you do it that way.
But here's the problem is when we say we're picking winners and losers, that's actually, I guess in some sense it's true, but it's really not true, because this commission picks a board of 9 individuals, collectors of the tax, users of that tax, to get together, at which you make a presentation. Every year unanimously, they vote and rank your organization as the number one to the commission that we should use those tax dollars for, because they think that is the best use of tax dollars, and they represent the county. And so, then what happens after that is, then you're right, it comes up on the commission, which is why people hate being on representative boards, because it's like, well, at the end, are they even going to listen to me?
Right.
And so,
Well, and we made a specific decision not to put any of the public money into the parade. I think we told you that the money that will go to fund the parade, which is between $60,000 and $70,000 every year to put the parade on, that money will come from resources like the Stadium of Fire, or from some individual things, so that this money will not come to the parade, but will be used for the balloons and some of the other events that are free to the public and make it possible for this community to celebrate in a way that doesn't happen anywhere else in the country.
That's interesting,
That's
Paul,
a great clarification, because that helps. And I mean, obviously it helps us, but I think it also helps through the discussion, the greater public understand where that tax money is
Yeah,
going.
so what we should do then, when we're looking down through this, we have Exhibit B here, and it has the Grand Parade rules as it's attached in here with our agreements. It looks as if it's attached to the whole process. Maybe that should be taken
Yeah,
out.
and when we put it in there, I didn't know we were gonna have this discussion, but I wondered whether that ought to even be there, because
Right.
this money won't go to the parade. It just, we made that decision because of the challenges that we face with these different issues, to put non-public money
Right,
to take care
I
of the
remember that
parade.
discussion.
And that for me, that helps immensely, because then we're getting at where I feel like those tax dollars should be, is in the wonderful events that you guys do that are free to the public there. And so that, I appreciate that clarification.
Thank you, and we appreciate you. This is a, you know, like you say, we live in a time that's unique to any time previous, with all the challenges, and we're the same with you. We don't like the issues and people fighting one another. I mean,
Right.
we want to be together. That's why we helped put on the license plate, United We Stand. That's the key. So if there's any other questions, I'm happy to deal with them, but we feel like probably this is the only place in the country where we can have the kind of celebration that we have because of Utah County and the people that live here. It's a great place.
It is.
So.
Well, I'll make a motion that
Well,
we
I
can,
was gonna see if there's any additional public comment first.
Mr. Chairman, maybe one thought too, as you're looking, it sounded like what you're suggesting today is to remove section 10, which is called parade policy, and
Right.
exhibit B attached there too. I'm assuming the exhibit B is their parade policy for all contracts that they entered into. That's their formulated policy. But what you could do is you could add a non-discrimination provision into the agreement, not so much for the parade policy, but for the use of our grounds. And that
you
way,
know-
if groups come in to want to participate and eat and things like that, they're not prevented from doing so.
yeah, and that was.
That was kind of with the vendors. We're very open to,
Yeah.
we have all the different kind of groups. Last year, we had to kind of calm down a couple because they were two next door to each other that didn't agree, and it got a little exciting at times, but again, we got through it.
Just so you know, there's also an indemnification provision in this contract that they would indemnify the county for any violations, so. But certainly having a non-discrimination policy would be.
And that's where I'm kind of leaning is to probably continue this for 1 week so that we can take out the number 10 and the exhibits and so forth, and then just tie it specifically to what we're looking at and what we kind of talked about too.
Appreciate
Great.
it.
This is valuable.
Right.
Thank you.
Well,
I've got
thank
a
you.
schedule for each of you. They asked us to bring so you know what's going on, so.
Thank you, Paul. Nope.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul?
We would offer additional public comment if there's any on this particular item.
My name is Amber Elison. I am a volunteer with Encircle. I'm not here in an official capacity for them, and in fact, if they knew I was speaking, they probably would ask that I don't. They've chosen to really take a high road on this issue, and the grace that they handled this whole thing when it was happening was shocking and amazing to me. I live in Provo. I'm LDS, so I am very much one of you. But this is a really important cause to me, and I've loved what Encircle has brought to this community. I actually volunteered to submit their application for the Freedom Festival. They were pretty new when it was when the application process was happening, and I just said, like, I live in Provo. I love the Freedom Festival. Like, can I help? So we very quickly. And late, by the way, we submitted a little bit late, and the festival, I know, has some people that work with the festival have told people that the reason we were denied is because our application was late. We were late, but not before an absolute deadline, and I do want to clarify that. We had anticipated having to pay a late fee to continue to participate. I received an approval from them. The gentleman commented that we wouldn't have wanted to see what we had planned, and I would like to clarify what we had planned. And I am curious to know if anyone else thinks this is controversial. So we had 100 kids sign up to march with us that day. I personally spent $1,000 on a Bluetooth speaker that I would just donate to the center to carry with us on the route. We applied to be part of the pre-parade because the grand parade is very grand. We didn't have the time or the resources to put together a float. So our plan was Steve Young his wife is on the board. He was really excited about it. He was flying in to march with us. So we had a sports theme. We told our kids, we will give you white shirts. That was another expense the house put up. We will give you some white shirts, wear sports attire. Specifically in the email that I sent out, and I got some backlash from some people, I said, this is not a pride parade. If you want to wear a small pin, that's fine. Please leave your flags at home. If you want to bring American flags, great. We're here to be a part of the festival. And we're just here to support our community. So we just said sports attire, headbands, and we had like a sports-ish theme song. We'd be marching with Steve. I ordered giant beach balls to roll into the crowd, and we were gonna hand out candy. And then we had like a very family-friendly, like we had small children. My 7 and 5-year-olds were gonna march. Family-friendly, choreographed march along the way. So this idea that like it was controversial or that it wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have been appropriate. The only thing in my mind that could be appropriate is that these kids belong to a certain community that maybe we don't feel comfortable with. And I think, like you said, that's the beauty of America, right? That we can show love. But if there's this idea that there's anything controversial about telling these kids that they're loved and accepted, I cannot accept that. I can't. And I've seen too many kids who just disappear from my own congregation. They come out and feel there isn't a place for them. And I have to hear about another mother who's lost her child. And so I'm grateful to John Curtis, who worked that day. I received notification even after constant communication and clarification about our idea being approved. I got the phone call the day before that we would not be able to participate. I had to call the directors and tell them, because I'm just a volunteer, I don't know what to do. So they worked all day. Steve got on the phone, and he thought, if anybody has pull in Provo, I hope maybe it's me still, right? He worked all day. I know John Curtis worked really hard on it, which I'm appreciative of. And about an hour before the rehearsal that we had that day, I got a call saying, there's nothing really more we can do, so we're gonna tell the kids. So I showed up with 3 dozen So Delicious cookies to hopefully pass out, making them feel better about what was happening. But we had to tell this, we're all in this beautiful house that was put there just to tell kids that we love them and appreciate them. And we had to tell them that, once again, to this marginalized, at-risk group, we had to tell them, you're not good enough for full acceptance. And we weren't there to advocate for anything. We weren't there to bang the door down for equal rights or gay marriage. That's not what Encircle does. Legally, they can't. They're a 501c3. And so to be in that room and watch this house full of kids be told once again, you are not good enough, that was a really hard day. And so regardless of the decisions that are made over funding today or in the future, I hope that the impact of these things are kept in mind. And I hope that we realize that these small ways, they're the smallest things that we can do by just letting people be a part of the community. That's so easy, you guys. It's so easy. And I don't want to hear any more about the reason why Encircle wasn't included is because they missed a deadline or because their idea was controversial or you wouldn't have wanted to see that. Like, there was nothing controversial about what was going to happen that day. I apologize to the Encircle board. like I said, they probably would have preferred that I would have just let it go. But as a Provo citizen and I have owned property in Pleasant Grove, I'm invested in this community, and I want to see it better. So, thank you.
Well, along those lines, I'd like to thank you because Steve and his wife were also instrumental in with the group that I helped because they asked for it, and I agree with you. I've shed many tears myself. The Love Loud concert, that was the best thing after that, especially. And yeah, and I worked on the logistical side, finding sites, and I'm so glad to know that we're working on doing that as an annual event because you're right, that is important. So.
Hi, my name is Brianna Cluck. I am a Provo resident. I have no connection to Encircle other than being a member of the LGBT community. I was volunteering in Love Loud, if that has to be disclosed. I was in the backup choir. I think the biggest problem here that we run into is the fact that it was done the day before, and the fact that Paul, in his own admission, is comparing Encircle, which is a 501c3, so it's a non-political group, to as if gun control advocates were in the parade. No one's saying that we have to have political parties or political groups in the parade because we're here to celebrate our diversity and our unity as Americans. Of course, in the festival, it's a little bit different because last year there were 2 separate Constitutional Congress groups which were there, but that's a separate issue. If I were to suggest one way that we could adjust the policy to make it more equitable would be to really make policy 1 more specific so that there's a blanket case of if you do X, Y, Z, you're not in the parade. Because as it stands, it's just nebulous enough for selective enforcement where some groups can be favored over others despite having similar, if not exactly the same, kinds of ideologies. One other thing that I think could really help would be if there's complications with the parade, if they're concerned about what they're going to do in the parade, what their message is going to be, give at least 72 hours notice. Paul seems to think that children wearing sports gear and t-shirts is controversial. If there were concerns with how controversial Encircle's group in the parade would be, give at least 72 hours and they can adjust as needed. As it stood, from my personal perspective, as an outsider to this whole situation, it felt very underhanded. And I know that my own personal feelings aren't going to change policy, but I do feel like the inconsistencies, there should be a better way to kind of hammer them out and make things more consistent and clear for parades going forward. And if they could recommit to working on those policies and doing blanket instead of selective enforcement, I think that could really go a long way to making sure everything's more fair for everyone involved. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tosh Metzger, and I just want to echo what everyone else has said before. This really gave Provo and Utah County a black eye that a lot of us had to defend, that love living here and love being a part of the community. I too am part of the LGBT community. I helped start Provo Pride. As you know, we had Provo Pride on the grounds here last year. It was a great success. It was awesome, an event. We plan on doing it again this year. My thing, again, was they were told the day before. And in the paper, Mr. Warner said, well, we refer back to policy number 3, which is we can decide which advocacy group we want, basically. And, you know, when you're picking and choosing between LDS missionaries and the LGBTQ group, between the 2 groups, you have one over the other with government funding, so to speak, helping out with these events. It kind of bothers me a little bit, but I just want to echo what everyone else has said. It sounds like this year going forward might be different, which I'm hoping so it is. And if that's the case, I think it'd be great to approve the funding. If we can learn from our mistakes and go from there, I have no problem with it, but that's just me. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, seeing no other public comment, we'll draw it back up to the bench.
I'll make a motion that we continue item number 36 to clarify a few things on the agreement and the contract.
Second?
Oh, 1 week.
Yeah, second.
I have a motion and a second to continue consent agenda item number 36 for 1 week. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Will carry 3-0. We'll now move to regular agenda item number 2.
Commissioner Ivy, real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. My understanding is consent item number 10 actually needs to be continued 1 week instead of approved. I just was informed of that.
Continued or stricken?
There's a mistake in that, and it just needs to be continued 1 week. So if you could just change it from approving it to continue it for 1 week.
Okay.
Approving that.
We'll withdraw consent agenda item number 10 from the consent agenda, and I'd entertain a motion.
Well, we can leave it on consent as continued.
Continued.
Just for clarification, yes.
Clarification.
Unless there's an objection. I don't.
Any objection? Okay. All right, we'll now move to regular agenda item number 2. This particular is the acceptance of annual payment in lieu of taxes. And I know we have some people from DNR here for a report that we're excited to hear about.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today and be able to address you. This is has to do with the annual in lieu tax payments on division lands within Utah County. I've got a check here for the county to present. The check's for $16,195.93. I've also got a letter I'd like to read from Director Fowles that goes along with this check. Excuse me. And then following that, I've also have my wildlife manager for the region, as well as one of my habitat biologists here that would like to address the council if that'd be okay.
Bet.
This letter is from Director Fowles. Dear Commissioners, enclosed is a check for the year 2017 contractual in lieu tax payment on land the Division of Wildlife Resources owns in Utah County. The money used to pay the in lieu tax is provided by hunters and anglers in your county and across the state. These lands are important to wildlife and to many hunters and anglers in Utah County. I appreciate the Commission's support as a partner in managing Utah's wildlife. Please contact me if we can be of further assistance. Sincerely, Michael Fowles. And I'd echo what Director Fowles said. Really appreciate the support of the county. We have a good working relationship together. We've got some projects online that we're excited about. When he mentions the lands that are within the county that are managed by the Division of Wildlife, we have 12 wildlife management areas scattered throughout the county. These wildlife management areas are primarily for the protection of wildlife, big game animals specifically. But they also allow access, hunters, hikers, anybody else that wants to access those properties as well to enjoy the outdoors. The total number of acres in the county is nearly 45,000 acres, just under that. We appreciate the opportunity, like Director Fowles said, to work with the county. I'd like to bring up, speaking of the wildlife management areas, we are in the process of putting together habitat management plans for these areas. We've worked on 4 of them in the southeast part of the county. I'd like to have Matt Howard come up and give a little presentation and ask for a little help on those, if that'd be all right at this time. Can I bring this forward?
You bet.
The check you can hand to Brian. We don't take money.
Good morning, Commissioners. As Jason said, I'm Matt Howard. I'm the Assistant Manager of the Habitat section in our region. What I would like to present is that we have a draft habitat management plan for 4 of our properties that we own. These are Starvation WMA, Dairy Fork WMA, Lake Fork WMA, and Birdseye. WMA stands for Wildlife Management Area. These are properties that were purchased for the management of winter range for big game species. So we manage these specifically to provide food for wildlife as they come down during the winter months to the foothills. So this plan outlines how we plan to manage these properties for the next decade, and it talks about travel management, things like that. And so we want to present this to you so that you can disseminate it to the people who you think would be able to comment on it. This is a draft plan so that we can make your comments, we can make amendments to it before it's a final.
Is there anything in contradiction with our resource management plan that we're aware of that would be?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to go over the resource management plan in total. I've skimmed it.
Additionally, have you had a chance to review any portion of this yet? Okay.
You're certainly welcome to look for any sort of contradictions like that and bring them up to us. I have 2 hard copies with me. I also will leave business cards so that you can contact me for digital copies. If you're aware of anybody else who you'd like to look over it and check it out, please let me know, and we'd be happy to take those into consideration. Any other questions for that? Okay. Who do I give these to?
You can just bring them up here. And we'll just read those. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me be here. My name is Riley Peck. I am the Wildlife Program Manager for this region, and I appreciate your opportunity letting me come. I like to come when we give the PILT payment and just give an opportunity to stand and talk about a few things we have going on in the region or in your county, and just see if there are any questions or concerns that we can address or be aware of moving forward. Utah County is a wonderful place for wildlife enthusiasts. There's a lot of hunting and viewing and intrinsic value that come to a lot of the people here, and we appreciate that. I think maybe over the last few years, some of the biggest issues that we are dealing with within the heart of the county is our urban deer program. There are a lot of cities that are taking that on and moving forward, and we're continually trying to work and improve and design a program that is beneficial to solve whatever issues or problems that may create by having a lot of a robust deer herd within the cities. And so we have a lot of those, as you're probably well aware, a lot of cities that are taking those on, and we're working with them. There is a lot of hunting that takes place, as you are aware. A lot of it is on some state land within the county, but some of it is county land alike. And so we appreciate all of the help and the knowledge and the work that we have from the county and from the cities within that. Are there any questions that you would have for me from a wildlife standpoint? Any concerns, anything moving forward?
On the urban deer population, as you see this, where are the successes that you see, and why are they successes?
So urban deer is kind of an interesting thing. We could have 100 deer in somebody's yard and they absolutely love it, and then 3 in somebody else's.
Yeah, they feed them.
It's the biggest problem in the entire world.
Right.
The biggest success that I see is when we handle the deer that are living there in the summer months. A lot of the county, a lot of the cities have migratory deer that come down in the winter. The snow pushes them off the mountain, they come down, and our populations in the cities rise. The true challenge is getting rid of the deer that are living there year round, that are eating the gardens and the tulips and the peaches in the summer when they're landscaping their yard either for produce or for beauty. And when we have the animals down there at that time of year, that is the challenge. So our biggest success comes when we can do something to address those deer.
So what are the tools that are being implemented and used to address that?
So we have a couple. One is a trap and relocate, where we work pretty hard to try and trap a deer and to move it into a different location. And another one is a euthanization program where we go in and remove the deer and then donate that to be processed for food to be donated to wherever the city decides. Most of the time it goes to feeding the hungry.
And there's, how many cities employ that, both programs? How many of them are active in that? I know Highland's one that...
So Highland, Alpine, Provo, Springville, Mapleton. I think that American Fork is looking at something. There are a bunch that are investigating it. There are a few that are active in it.
I would have a question for you. Recently, Interior Secretary Zinke spoke of initiative to go ahead and really work on preserving wildlife migratory corridors. What conjunction do you have with those efforts, and what can we do as a county to assist in preserving those wildlife migration corridors?
So a lot of them is recognizing currently where some of them are to protect them for the future. You know, it's hard. We have highways and different areas where we may have already lost some of the historic corridors. So one of the biggest efforts we have in the wildlife section is recognizing where the migration corridors still exist and finding ways to improve and to protect those. Where there's an active effort going on with trying to collar a lot of our animals to see where their movements are and have the ability to track that. I think the support comes in when we are trying to move forward in that protection. Sometimes it has to do with highways and byways and right-of-ways, and we're trying to work with underpasses and overpasses and ways to not only make the highway a little bit more safe so we're not hitting deer and elk or moose on the road, but allow them to move off of summer ground onto winter ground where they should be wintering on that migration in a safe manner. And so once they are discovered and we know where they are, then sometimes the challenge is getting all the players involved to make it move forward.
And do you anticipate some type of report or something that will be disseminated to the counties and cities so that we can, you know, as we look at land acquisitions and other things, we can consider those areas as a top priority?
So yeah, we do have a migration initiative, and part of their primary concern and desire is to look at those reports, to develop those and make them available to people throughout the state for those decision-making process. And that is relatively in its infancy stages. Kind of was rolled out within the last few months, and so as we move forward, we hope that product is a little bit more robust and a little bit easier to get its hands on. But yeah, that hopefully in the future is something that is everywhere.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I left my card on the letter that I left you earlier. If you have any other questions or concerns that come up, please let me know. Please contact me. We've got a great staff here. Our office is in Springville, open to any questions, concerns, comments anytime. Do you have any other specific questions?
Well, this is a publicly recorded meeting, so I'll avoid mentioning that I have over 20 bonus points for what's looking like my once-in-a-lifetime elk hunt, but I complain enough on Facebook, so I won't do that here to you guys.
We'll certainly see what we can do, Commissioner.
No, I don't want you to. I just
well,
appreciate.
Just for the record, we have no control over who draws and who doesn't draw. So.
I say that tongue-in-cheek because I appreciate the wonderful work you do in keeping the wildlife opportunities for the sportsmen in Utah. You do a fantastic job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and thanks for your help and support as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll move that we accept the annual payment in lieu of taxes as stated number 2.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the annual payment as stated in regular agenda item number 2. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion will carry 3-0.
Looks like Pat, however, is working a deal for you.
Yeah.
Or for himself, I should say.
Probably for himself. So we will, regular agenda item 7 was continued. We'll now move to regular agenda item number 8. This is a resolution to look at creating a recommendation committee charged with reviewing relevant salary studies and recommendations to the commission for a salary schedule. Commissioner Graves, this was your agenda request. I'll let you start with the introduction.
So a couple weeks ago, we had a couple of my portfolios, department heads come to me with concerns. They have people that are leaving and asked where we were at. So I asked Dave Shawcroft to prepare a resolution that would be more in harmony with how we have done, how we did the budget and kind of how we've gone through things, and that is to make a recommending committee. The intention of this committee is to review all the salary information that's out there and additional information that department heads think may have been missed or need to be addressed or whatever it is, for this committee to discuss those, have representation from every department so that they can make sure their voice is heard, whether they want 2 or 3 people or whatever, and then sit through and figure out and make a recommendation on a salary schedule to the commissioners and also how to implement the $1 million that we set aside, and that way we also can start making steps forward, because we're running out of time for potential if budget adjustments are needed or things like that. And so I thought, it's been a few months since we went down this road, and a lot's been going on, I know that, but even though the employees are protected, and we did pass that we will backdate it to January 1st, we need to get moving on this. And I would anticipate that this process would probably take 4 to 6 weeks minimum before they'd come out with a recommendation. That's why I think it's time for us to start. That's why I put it on here. So it was prepared by Dave Shawcroft, so if it's got typos, I will not take credit this time. I'm not that smart to prepare it. So that was kind of, I will say, Rob Moore did point out to me that because I did it by resolution, that does make it an open process, which I believe is the exact vein that I would like it to be. I think that the one thing that the commission hears from the employees is, it's not an open process, it's not an open process, and we feel it is. It may not be as open as you want, and I can certainly understand that. But I think in this case, I would like to echo Commissioner Lee's words. My intention with this committee is not to discuss people, it is to discuss positions. Positions only. You can't start talking and value judging people. That's for department heads and supervisors to do. That's not for the commission. We need a salary schedule that works for every employee and for the service of Utah County. That's the intent. So.
I did have one question on this, and it would come probably to our legal staff. With it being a legislative action, I do have concern about the grammability and the accessibility to some potentially private information, or tying specific people to performances that would probably not be appropriate. What type of risk is exposed there?
Well, you can, because you've already approved the budget, including this $1 million that we're talking about that was set aside for the salary survey, over and above the 3.2% that you gave to all employees. You can do it. You could do it this way through this process. It does create a public body under the Open Public Meetings Act, which means it would have to comply with that act. The other way you could do it is you could do it. It's already been approved. It's already been dealt with. All you could do at that point is set it aside turn it back to HR, who then would set up a committee if they would like to. HR would like to do that, and then bring back a recommendation or recommendations to you as the commission. I think that's an option too. That would not essentially create a public body. That would prevent the potential of information getting out to that would be inappropriate information getting out. There is, typically it's just gonna be salaries and positions, but there are typically names that come along with that too. That is currently public information now. And then we wouldn't be able to prevent that, but there could be additional information that does come out through this process. I don't know if I answered your question, other than tell you that there is some risk, yes, if you go through this process.
We didn't protect any of that on our salary study. The only thing we protected was the work product from our contractor.
Yeah, and so, you know, it's really
So it's already been released by grandma.
You know, to understand, the HR director is tasked under Utah law with classification, which is that's happened, and that's their role. The HR director is also tasked with preparing a pay plan, which has already been done and submitted to you, and you approved it in part and then amended it in part, and that's where we are today, really, is trying to figure out how to implement what we've already approved. And
But
so
this
there's
doesn't-
multiple ways to do that.
This doesn't exclude the HR director from
Correct.
at all. That's not the intent.
The question is, I mean, you can create that public body if you want to, because you've already approved the budget, you've already done all those things. It's administrative in nature. You don't have to do that either.
And
You have that option.
If I can tag just for a second on that, as I look down through this, and I think that we've got a good model in there, how we did that with our last year with the budget. And I do appreciate the thought into that. we have already done a legislative action in the sense that we've approved that $1 million to be set aside, which was a legislative action on this, and had the market study presented to us. So we have all the legislative actions in place. I would like to not do it on a legislative basis. I'd like to do it administrative, and the reason why, and I still think we should keep it as open as possible, but the reason why I'd like to see it on an administrative basis is because of flexibility. We have a little bit more flexibility. With a legislative action, it really kind of ties us to this is the structure of it. Administratively, we can pull in, we can take out, we can do a little bit more administratively than we can legislatively. And so I would like just to, again, I'm not saying that, I mean, the process looks great, but administratively, I think it gives us a bit more flexibility.
Well, and my real only intent for this is to start a process that leads us to a conclusion for a recommendation so that we can start taking action by the 1st of May, 1st of June, so that we can make those important decisions.
I think that's important.
And that's the intent here.
If I can just tag a little bit so that, you know, the employees that are watching this, after the first of the year, the thought was, okay, when are we gonna jump onto this? And just so that everyone knows, we actually directed Cammie to hold off for a little bit on this because we had $500,000 fines coming down on us with distribution. We had GL, we have workday systems that were going on. And so for us, it seemed like, okay, where are we gonna put this in the queue to make it work effectively? And we want to do it. We want to do it in the appropriate time and place and manner. But we were concerned about, you know, losing $500,000 here, $500,000 there when it comes to some of the fines. And this was one that we thought, at least I thought, that we could kind of put off. The timing's probably close, if not right. We're really close with our distribution. I keep knocking on wood on some of those things, you know, and getting those things done. So I think we're right at that space. Again, I'm just gonna, I think we need to start. We need to start doing it. I would prefer to see it on an administrative level than on a legislative. Just my thoughts.
Okay. All right, looks like we have some additional comment. We'll have those at this time.
I think it's a great idea to do it administratively. I think because I report directly to the commission, that direction and that guidance for how you want this board to be set up is there because you've already passed the legislative actions, and administratively I do report to y'all. So I think it would be wise for us to take the intent of what this ordinance would be and make sure that it's clear and that we get some deadlines that will be public so employees know what to expect coming next 3-4 months.
Okay.
Gentlemen, I'm John O'Hara with the Sheriff's Office. Got off a night shift last night and came in early just to address some of this issues with you. Wasn't aware until I showed up this morning that this particular item was on here. I was coming anyway to ask you about the status of this, so I appreciate you letting us know that the reason we haven't seen any movement on it was because of these other issues and your guidance to HR over it. I have a little problem with committees because they seem to be the place where ideas go to die. Right now, we have got significant problems with hiring and retention. I know the undersheriff, one of the chiefs is here. They can correct me if I've got this wrong from what internal information has at the sheriff's office. But the courts did a testing. They had 6 people show up, none that qualified. The jail did a testing, no one showed. I've been involved with hiring for the patrol division, and we have seen a steady decrease over the last few years in both quantity and quality of applicants. I can tell you that while it was appreciated, the 3.2% increase in the commitment that you gentlemen made, there are a lot of members of at least the sheriff's office with decades of experience with the county commission, and this is not directed at any of you personally, but all the commissions in the past have basically given the employees the opinion that their promises are only slightly better than North Korea's. So there is not a lot of trust that the situation is going to be resolved. Yesterday, I took a phone call from a detective for another agency doing a background check to hire a deputy away from us. I know of 3 deputies right now in the background check process to leave the sheriff's office. That's pretty unheard of in my career. I've been here over 20 years. We can't hire anyone right now, and we're losing them. I know of several more that have been offered. Other agencies are actively recruiting. I held a team meeting at a coffee shop here in Provo to go over vacation schedules. And I had an administrator from another agency actively recruiting all of us. I jokingly asked him if they'd be willing to match a sergeant's pay to hire on. He said, yeah, I think we're at that point. Gentlemen, we look at the wages, we know what the other agencies are doing. We know what our peers are receiving. And we know, I took a few minutes, it's not a hard process. I took a few minutes, looked at the 3 pay scales that I know, the patrol deputy, the sergeant, and the lieutenant for the sheriff's office. Took me 5 minutes to compare starting and median pay off that wage scale, off that wage study to the scale we have now. Deputy 3s deserve about a 5-step increase. That would put us at least able to keep the people that we've got. I am sure that the corrections deputies and the court deputies are even worse off than the patrol ones, but I don't know their exact scale. If you gentlemen wish to do a committee to resolve this, I would ask for a couple of things. One, that you set a specific date that they will report back to you with their work done. You suggested 4 to 6 weeks. Set a date, sir.
So
that
the
would be my
only way to
recommendation.
do that is my way. This resolution is the only way that's binding. Other than that, it's not transparent. It doesn't have to be. So I know you say committees are where it goes to die, but everything I've heard is, and I'm not saying you're wrong in that, but the reality is if we don't have equal representation from everybody, okay, let me speak candidly to every employee. The excuses that Commissioner Lee used, which are valid because it's real, the $500,000 in fines and the delays, and you mentioned we can't hire and can't retain and we can't do all of these. That's why I want a committee. Because the reality is we still have to do all those functions, and until we can get our head to water, not even above water, to water, we need to all step in and do our part, and that's where the department heads can help. And that's why I want to put teeth to what the commission passed and said. We said we valued employees. We said we're going to do this. We have an ordinance that commits us to a wage study last year. Actually, we're even later than that on it, as all the employees know. And so the only way to do it is legislatively, because it is binding and it does give teeth to it. That's the difference. You do it administratively, it's a little more, it doesn't have to be transparent. There are ways to do it and you don't have to, that's for me why I did it this way. I knew exactly what I was doing.
I understand that, sir, and if this is the route that you want to go in order to find that information, I do have a couple of requests that you consider. As I said, put a specific date that they report back to you. That their first task in the very first week that they meet is to identify anybody that's 10% or greater, any job description that's over 10% off what that last wage study was, and you gentlemen implement those pay raises immediately. Just go 10%, and they can fine-tune it down the road.
So part of this committee is to recommend how to spend that $1 million.
Yes, sir. And I would say in the first week, you can identify, based on that wage study, all the job positions are at least 10% off.
I agree. There's just not $1 million. There's just more than $1 million that it would take. That's what I believe.
And quite possible. And positions like mine, positions like the others that, based on that wage study, are less than 10%, I'll wait until you gentlemen sort out the financing. But most of the positions that I'm looking at least in the sheriff's office, are the critical line positions that we have to do law enforcement in this county. The patrol deputies, the court deputies, the jail deputies. The other thing is, if you do choose to make this an administrative committee and close it, I would ask the representatives from the Deputies Association, the Utah County Employees Association, the FOP, be allowed to sit in that committee. I know that at least for 2 of those agencies that the people that are the presidents or people they're likely to recommend are supervisors and would be held to the rules regarding an administrative meeting. But if you're going to do that, the employees would like to have eyes on it as well.
Sure. And that's why I prefer it to be legislative, so it's a very open and
And
transparent.
that would be my preference, sir. I would absolutely prefer it that I could come and sit down at the meeting and watch what they're saying. That'd be my preference. Thank you, gentlemen.
Administrative doesn't mean closed.
No.
Right.
But legislative forces it to be opened.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any additional comment. We'll bring it back up here. I like this concept primarily because one of the things I really like is where it touches all of the departments, so we get broad input and we can prioritize. I also actually lean to this being administrative, but I think we can absolutely set a date with that because that's what holds people accountable is deadlines. And so I have no problem at all setting a date with it.
So I will tell you what
having people
elected
attend it.
officials said to me that are also department heads. The reason they think it should be legislative is because the state legislature is already set in by law. There's only one person that gets to make the recommendation. So in essence, they're really making a recommendation to her to make a recommendation to us. They believe that if this is, and I'll let them go speak for it later, but they're in my portfolio. So they believe that if that's the case, that this potentially could get hijacked or slow played if it's not done in a manner like this where we let it stay under the form in which it happened, because some were very frustrated with how we went through the process last time.
Okay, I haven't heard any of those concerns. I'd love to hear them now.
So.
Chris Paulson, County Assessor. Those are not my concerns. My concern is the limited amount of time that we had with the consultant. The consultant was very forward with us too and said that she was not allowed to give us the data, that we could view it, and the information that was presented to us was, you've seen it, it was small type on spreadsheets that went on forever. So in 2017, we had very, very limited access to the consultant. Since 2017, we've had a spreadsheet that was disseminated to all the employees. And going through those numbers, I found numerous errors in classifications. And if you've got those types of errors going to an outside consultant, obviously the results are not going to come back correctly. So those were the concerns I had moving forward, was limited access, limited input. And basically I was told that any recommendation that I made going forward would not be accepted because the commission was either going to accept or not accept the consultant's results, which again put us in another bind because the consultant truly didn't understand a lot of the variables that have been going on. The consultant was very clear that what's happened in the past and the process we have presently is very dysfunctional. And I think everyone in this room agrees with that.
You know, Chris, if I could jump in, I feel the same way with your concerns on that, and fought for quite some time to get information back to do kind of apples to apples comparisons, because I don't know how you make decisions that way when you don't have all of the information, and that was very, very concerning to me personally. And so we haven't even defined yet which the numbers are we going to accept, which numbers are right, or where the base numbers are, or where the benchmark numbers are within organizations. And that's part of the real problem that I have with the market study that we went through, is that we don't even know where they're at, where the numbers are at. We're still kind of in this little bit of a limbo state. So I feel exactly the way you do when it comes to the numbers on that and the data.
Chris actually has a spreadsheet for his whole staff that he's worked on that makes a lot of sense. And that's why I say going down that road where letting each of the departments work, because they know and they have more of that expertise that can be coupled with the expertise from HR and the people that participate in that.
I agree that that needs to be a part of the process for sure.
I think a more holistic approach needs to be addressed at this point, because we've had conversations 6 months ago that said, oh, well, this will be resolved. Don't worry about retention and other things because we'll have this resolved within 6 months. We're now going way past that. The sheriff's office is not unique. I've probably lost over the last 3 years not quite half my appraisers.
Well, the attorney's office had another one yesterday that left because of this exact situation.
We're losing competencies, and that's what's really draining on an administration is the time and expense it takes to train people to get them up to a level that then they become marketable and leave. And they're not leaving in my profession for the same profession. Our entry level pay for a trainee is $35,000 to start. That requires a bachelor's degree. The average bachelor's degree coming out of college is over $50,000. We have a lot of people just leaving the industry because they can make more money in other industries. We're competing with a larger block than just what is specifically being looked at here. So, anyway, thank you.
Thanks for sharing that.
I know this is Darren Durfee, Utah County Sheriff's Office. I know this agenda item is very specific. We're talking about the $1 million that was set aside and the process to do that.
No, it's actually the whole salary.
Right, okay. So I want to echo part of what's been said. John O'Hara expressed to you the concerns that we have. We are losing people. We will be 10 down in corrections. The courts are down. And we're competing for the same people with other agencies. We're not able to compete with them. We just lost a gal from corrections who's going to Spanish Fort PD, who will be making initially as much as our sergeants to start. That's concerning. We have a great agency. People stay here because they love working for the sheriff's office. But that only goes so far. They have to start looking at how they take care of their family, how much more money they can earn other places. Other agencies are offering incentives that frankly we're not and we can't keep up with. So not only is our pay falling behind, but we have agencies competing for our same people, our same pool of people we're competing for, and it's just not working. When we post a job opening, we have very, very few people that are showing up to test. Most of those have been dismissed from other agencies. They're not people that we want to hire. Occasionally we do find some, and it's a good day when we do. But if we're not competitive, we're going to fall behind, and we're not going to be able to provide services to the citizens of our county that are necessary. So I urge you, I mean, it is a critical thing. Whatever needs to be done, it needs to be done. And that applies across the board, as Chris just mentioned. It's not just the sheriff's office. I know it's other departments as well. So whatever you choose to do going forward, I hope you bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other additional comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back up here to the bench for any additional comment or discussion.
Well, so I guess my question, Commissioner Lee, you brought up your frustration with the salary study, and it wasn't transparent, but this is an option. I actually modeled this, and this is literally how I told Dave to craft this. Craft this so it's legal, and craft it in a way that it coincides with everything that Commissioner Lee has done, like in that model, because I knew you'd like it.
I like it. I'm not saying
this is a transparent model that allows us to go through, and again, it's a recommending committee. It's still a legislative recommending committee that has a couple more layers of oversight to make sure, but it lets everybody else keep doing the stuff while people are still doing it. That's
and don't think that I don't like it. I think it's a great model in there. There are a few things that frankly I'll just
sure.
I think the HR department needs to have a heavier hand. I'll just say that right now in it, and I think that happens as we do it on an administrative basis, but with the concepts that we're talking about here, and I have no problem with it being open.
So when you say heavier hand, though,
they're statutorily, I mean,
I know, but you and I both know there are some potential concerns with some of the things that have happened with that being in that department, with the salary study, and with some of these other things that you're talking about. I mean, there are 4 internal audits that raise red flags on why we should be doing this process, literally should be doing this process as an open, transparent legislative action, with then it going through with an oversight by HR, with then a final recommendation to the commission.
And I just think we can get there administratively, that will allow it. That's just, again, I like what's set up. I'm not trying to downplay that at all, because I think it works. We've seen.
Well,
the
without
model.
teeth, I agree with them.
We can put
John.
teeth in it, in the sense of time, time limitations. We can put the teeth in that's needed and necessary. I don't have a problem with a recommendation that needs to come back in 4 weeks. If we want to put that in there and say 4 weeks is our recommendation for it, let's move forward. Let's get this accomplished.
Well, and I was really thinking more 6 because of spring break and who knows, right? Plus
Whatever
by the end of
that is,
by the end of April, May 1st.
It needs to be done. It is. I think we're at a point now, just with some of the chaos that was going on with distribution and
Yes.
and Workday and all those things that have just been pummeling us right now.
But I know, but see, this is going back to my point when you say HR needs to have a heavy hand. In every one of those things you mentioned, who is in charge of all those?
Well, yeah, but now they're getting to the point to where they're starting to handle some of those areas so that they can.
My point is if retention and hiring is still a big deal, which it is, that's been our problem for a long time, right? And every department keeps saying we can't retain our people and we can't hire, and they need to focus on that. What we've literally admitted in this meeting today is that we had to stop them from doing something and say, okay, now do this task. Okay, now that's done. Now do this task, because we had $500,000 in fines and we had all these things. So my point is, so the business of the county can keep going. That's why I think this way is the best, because because Workday, I mean, unless we're just going to junk the $1 million investment, which we're not. They've got a lot to do on that. Right. They have a lot to do with everything they still have to do.
And I want the department heads. I want Chris there. I want to see his spreadsheets too. I want to have him look at all the data that's out there, that we possibly have, and be able to look down through the whole thing and say, this makes sense. This does not. Let's get to the real numbers. Let's stop having the numbers out there that are off, or that are 44%, off compared to like the one that I looked at last year.
But see, that's why I like it. If we do it more like we do the budget process, where we can even stream it, and it's more of an open process, so that everybody can see it, the employees know, again, because we shouldn't be talking names. I mean, we shouldn't be talking names, period. It's always positions, because whether it's 30 years from now or whatever the time frame, that employee will be retired or leave, and that position is what needs to be analyzed for the service of Utah County.
So I'll weigh in here just a little bit. For me, if this is to remain a legislative codified action, there would be some amendments that I would like to see. One would be reporting dates added, so that there would be specifics as to when the reports would come back. A sunset clause for dissolution of the committee, unless we want to have it be a standing committee that meets every 3 years, so that we have, because again, if we're codifying, we need to make sure that it has either a sunset clause built in there, or an annual reporting or organizing of the committee, or a 3-year annual organizing of the committee, so that there's clear definition there.
The only thing I would add on your reporting is that not just us, but also to HR director, because again, by statute.
Right, by statute. I would like to see, for me, it would need to have some additional language that for disclosure of personal information, to make sure that we protect the employees there. I think all of that's accomplished if we make it an administrative action, because then we have that flexibility. But if we want to codify it because we feel that moves forward the best, to me, I would need to see those type of
I'm okay with all that
verbiage changes to make that more clear.
If I can weigh in just 1 second, if you're going to go legislative with it, then you could approve your resolution with that. If you're going to go administrative, then you're not going to approve a resolution. All you're going to do is give a directive from today in the meeting, telling HR that they need to report back on such and such date, and that you want them to form a committee that looks like this.
Right, and
you can do that.
And I would be happy having that directive, actually, even though it's an administrative action, actually be specifically spelled out and written, and passed or spoken.
But see, again, that goes back to some of the concerns that have been brought to me and that is whoever's picking the representatives. That's why under this, what my plan was is like we do generally everything. The department head who's responsible, whether that's an elected official or an appointed person or whatever, they would send themselves and or competent representation to assist in that process. So, please do.
Please.
Merritt Fulmer from HR. I just would like to reiterate what has already been stated, that it is a statutory responsibility of the HR director to have final ruling, final say on classification and grade allocation. And I do fully support as well.
Final recommendation to the commission, not final say.
Yeah, final recommendation. Well,
we can always reject it.
You can reject the overall plan and structure, but she does have, the HR director does have final say on classification.
One of our very smart elected officials, who may be the most savvy person I've met at the county, he just pointed out our classifications are wrong, and he raised those concerns with our consultant and with your department. So that's where I'm trying to weigh the,
I was going to say, I am not opposed at all to department heads or their representatives of their choosing, that, there is a collaborative meeting and process of how to, identify areas in the study that maybe need another look, but more importantly, the implementation of the study. I do strongly believe that that can be handled on an administrative level, and that is the appropriate way. Anyways, that is just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. I would have a potential suggestion for the board to consider. I kind of give some ideas on what I'd like to see in additional verbiage. Given the comments just made, I also might think it would be recommendable for the attorneys to give direction to them to give us a written opinion on the statutory responsibility of the HR director, and if there would be any conflict by legislatively creating this board, just to make sure that we don't have any conflict there. I would anticipate that could be done within a week.
We could do that. I think
can I push back on that a little? The only reason I'd say that is this was drafted by the Civil Division Chief, Rob's boss.
So let me respond to what you're just saying, though.
And there's lots of legislation that's drafted that's still in conflict with statute.
Utah Code 1733-7.
I'm sorry, I couldn't tell the code.
Okay, sorry. Utah Code 17-33-7 talks about the functions of County Office of Personnel Management. And so I'm gonna cite to you two different subsections of this, and so you can understand what's going on. Under subsection 1C2, Roman numeral 2, it says the County Office of Personnel Management shall design and administer the county classification plan and grade allocation system, including final decisions on position classification and grade allocation. That's what Merritt was referring to when she was saying that there's some responsibility. However, if you go a little further down, under subsection 2, it says under 2F, subsection 2F, county agencies, departments, or offices shall perform other functions approved by the county executive and agreed to by the county agency, office, or department. So you could require additional functioning. The ultimate grade allocation has to be determined by HR, but we're kind of beyond that. They already recommended a pay plan. We're talking about $1 million that you've set aside previously and trying to figure out how that's to be allocated.
That's a big component.
Yeah, let me finish for a second, if I could. So what you're looking at, and I explained this to HR yesterday, is you're looking more of at almost a 10,000-foot view, because you have $1 million, and how that's going to be divided. And maybe you start with the ones that are 10% and higher, and start with those. But there's going to be some determination that has to be made as to how to deal with that. And I think they also need to look at what your motion was when you approved the budget and how you decided that it ought to be spent, this $1 million. So I think that you can in fact do what you're looking to do. That's why Dave did draft this.
Okay.
Realizing that there is some responsibilities that are pertain to the HR department and their role. And that's why, in a way, the administrative process is the better process, or could be argued to be the better process, because you do still give that HR department their role, but you've now incorporated more people into it to allow for this. But again, I'm not the one making that decision. That's your decision you can make. You can go through either process. I'm not telling you if it's better or not. I'm just trying to tell you that that's an option, and it would allow you to comply with both sections of the
So
statute.
here's my problem with doing it administratively. Let's just, because we haven't been beating around the bush today anyway. The reality is if we do it administratively, Commissioner Graves gets shut out. Commissioner Graves doesn't have a say, and I feel like that I'm the one that this is kind of the thing that I'm doing. And so that's kind of my problem. I feel like this is the only way for me to get this done in an open and transparent way, because I was fought every step of the way in the salary study process. I brought up the concerns that you've heard today, brought up many other concerns, and the fact is I was shut out. So to do an administrative process allows for the continuation of that process. If we set it legislatively where it's passed by this body, it has to go through there, then all of a sudden you don't have the ability for just two commissioners to backdoor do something.
If you would show up to administrative meetings, maybe you wouldn't be shut out.
No, I'm never invited.
You're on all of the emails,
No.
Commissioner Graves.
No, not on these ones I'm talking about. So,
But if you would like further, if you want a written opinion, we could provide that to you, if that's what your preference is. But it's really based upon.
It was a suggestion. I'd be happy to discuss it with you, just because I want to make sure we go through. I support the concept. I like what you're trying to do here. I just want to make sure I'm comfortable with it.
well, again, you're the one that came up with $1 million, and you're the one that wasn't there for half the budget meeting, so we can sit here and do
I
this all
was
day
at every
long.
single budget meeting, Greg. I
Oh.
participated on the phone electronically
Mr.
if
Clerk
I was
Auditor, would that be
unable.
a true statement that he was at every one of them?
I participated on the phone if I wasn't able to be here physically.
Doesn't matter.
It does matter.
If I could just,
It's
I know we
Yeah,
wear
it is.
multiple hats, legislative and executive and so forth. And as Rod was reading that, if somebody else was sitting in the executive role, maybe off here somewhere, this probably wouldn't even be a discussion, because as Rod was pointing out there, it's an executive function, and the executive would have done it in an administrative way. It wouldn't even come to the legislative side.
I just wanted to make a recommendation that perhaps will allow for transparency as well as the intent of meeting deadlines. We can meet, my department and the commissioners, and we can come up with those deadlines, and we can publish them on our website, and we can keep meeting minutes, and we can publish those meeting minutes for employees to review and be able to see how the process is going along. We can find ways to make this administrative process transparent and
The commission,
hopefully
however,
be able
doesn't
to
need to be
get-
involved in that. That's what I'm saying, that the administrative
Setup.
process is really the
But I-
department heads working
Setup.
to you and keeping us involved of
I
the
think she's
information.
saying the setup.
Right.
The setup of
this,
it.
the
yeah.
setup so that it reflects well on both the commission and the HR department that we're working together and that we're working for the benefit of the employees and to keep the promises that were made. So I think there are creative ways that we can come up that are pioneering ways to be inclusive of these ideas of being transparent and bringing our employees along the way. That's all I wanted to say.
And I think there's something that we can all agree on. This needs to be done. I think we can agree on that. I think we can agree that we really want to make the best decision possible for the most amount of people out there and do it on a strategic basis. So that it works effectively. And to do that, I think we have to have all the information and all the data that is needed and necessary. And however the process works, we want to make sure that everyone has a certain, not everyone in the sense that everyone out there in the county or whatever, but those that can touch this can have an opportunity to speak to it that have relevant information.
Absolutely. like I've mentioned, I really like this concept. I like what you're trying to do here. I just want to make sure that if it's legislative or administrative, that it's the right, which way is the best way. We've had the discussion today. My personal preference would be to continue it for 1 week so I can continue to have the conversations with the attorney's office. I was at NACO last week when this came on. But I really like the concept and want to have us do something on it and take an action.
And I
on
actually
it.
anticipated that we would continue it, knowing that we need to add or amend it, because.
I appreciate that.
I'll move then that we continue item 8 for 1 week.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to continue regular agenda item 8 for 1 week. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It will carry 3-0. We have regular agenda item number 14 next.
All right, Brandon Larson, Community Development staff. What we have here is a request for a rezone. We got 88 acres roughly in the mouth of Payson Canyon. A little portion of that property, there's a little piece that's on the side. Most of this land's on the, I guess it'd be kind of the east side of Nebo Loop Road. There's a little piece on the west side that's already in the RA5 zone. The property is it's pretty mountainous. It's pretty. I guess you could even say large hills, but it's still pretty. It's in the canyon. It's in the mouth of the canyon there. It's in an urban wildland interface, which means there's additional fire concerns there. It's in our natural hazards overlay. Right now in the CE1 zone, you have the ability for one home per 50 acres. The applicant would like to go to the RA5 zone, and that would allow additional, potentially additional dwellings to be built. There's kind of two parts of this property. There's like a 55-acre piece that's closer to the canyon, and there's no home on that. Actually, it's tied to a dwelling site, but there's another parcel of land that's up canyon that is, it's actually 6 parcels. It's supposed to be 2, and it was divided without going through the subdivision process. So they've kind of showed their intent of wanting to establish some more dwelling sites. So they have they have roughly 6 parcels in this, or pieces of land in this more up canyon piece of property. I think one of the important things in all of this is kind of to look at what the intent of the CE1 and the RA5 zone is. The RA5, so the CE1 zone, if you look at the legislative intent, it is to protect and conserve water recharge areas, vegetation, soil, wildlife, to limit danger of flood, fire, natural hazards. And so, of course, as I mentioned earlier, this is an area that has fire concerns, natural hazards. It's certainly an area that has a agricultural watershed land use designation as per our general plan. And so I think if you look at it, it looks like this property is probably, it's staff's opinion that this property is zoned as it should be. If you look at the legislative intent of the RA5 zone, some of the highlights there is it says that the RA5 zone covers the portions of Utah County which historically have been irrigated land and utilized for growing of crops and raising of livestock. It includes areas of the county where the combination of soil quality, size of land parcel, availability and supply of water, and other natural and man-made factors make the land the most suitable and appropriate for agricultural use. And so when you look at, I've given you pictures of the property, and so is the applicant. It's pretty hilly. There might be a few spots on the property where you could site some homes, but more importantly, to staff, it doesn't look like the best place to be engaging in a number of agricultural pursuits. I suppose grazing could possibly occur. But it's staff's recommendation that the county commission deny the proposal and let the current zoning stand. So
somebody here to speak on
I
it.
was going to.
Yeah, the applicant, I believe, is here.
We'll go ahead and turn it for
who?
public comment.
Aaron Troyer.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Art Schroyer, we own the property. 12 years ago, we purchased the property, 35 acres. Purchased from Payson Livestock Association. Recently, just as soon as we bought it, we noticed there were fridges and stoves and couches, and there was all kinds of debris up there. It's become a dumping site. Quite a bit of drug paraphernalia, and so we cleaned it all up and finally decided the only way to keep it clean was to put a fence, and so we put a field fence up. The next day, someone brought a desk and chucked it over the field fence onto the place. So we decided the only time, I'm a school teacher, and I've never owned property. The only way we thought we could protect property is to have a house on it, a home on it. So we approached the county, and Utah County worked with us on it. We're so grateful for Utah County. They, because of an illegal subdivision by Payson City, just above us is an irrigation pond, and Payson City had illegally subdivided a quarter acre. And I'm not sure why, but they illegally subdivided a quarter acre, which made our property illegal. So the county came to us and said, if you'll donate the Nebo Loop Road, because we own the Nebo Loop Road, we own the whole place. And so they said, if you'll donate Nebo Loop Road to the county, then we'll give you a building permit for the right-hand side. And so we did that. We donated the property, and and Utah County owns the property, the Payson Loop right there through it. Then they said, if you can approach Payson City and see if Payson City will be able to put that 1/4 acre back in the parcel, then we'll give you a building permit on the other side. We have a good relationship with Utah County because we want to do what Utah County's asked us to do. We've always tried to do that. We have a good relationship with Payson City. We kind of a redneck family. We brought pig wrestling to Utah County and Onion Days. 2 years later, Utah County liked it enough that they started in Utah County. So we don't have to do it anymore, which is we're grateful for it because it was a lot of work. But we have a good relationship with Payson City, so we went to Payson City and said, hey, look, we don't want the property. We just want, you can have access to it. You can have anything you need, easements. We just need to put it back in our property, and Utah County were willing to do that. So we've got the 2 building permits. Since those 2 building permits, we've had no dumping, no drug paraphernalia. When we were building the fence, the day we built the fence, we had a really nice car and a real beater car drive right by us back into the trees by the stream. And I'm sure it was a drug deal going down. And so putting homes up there has now increased the security and the beauty of the canyon. There were a couple concerns with the Planning Commission. We understand that. Again, we want to do everything legal. We've tried to keep everything legal. The only reason we subdivided, and it's not really subdivided, I have 6 children. I'm sure you guys understand with families. We have 6 children, and so one of our families, my oldest daughter, built on the right-hand side with the 29 acres, and they only bought 5.5 acres, and so the rest of the family was saying, Dad, we need you to put that other property in your name so that it's legally your property, not the property of the oldest daughter. So that's the only reason we did the subdivision. It's not a subdivision. It's on paper. We've never even had it surveyed. It's just on paper, just to make sure that legally, when we pass, which I got one foot in the grave, one on a banana peel, so we're almost out of here. When we pass, it'll go to the family, not to my oldest daughter and her husband. That's the only reason we split the property up. Just a couple of concerns that the Planning Commission had was, one, they said we should have done a study on sloughing and on any landslides. When we built both homes, the county made us do that. $1,500 we paid for that architectural study on both sides of the property. So that architectural study is done and it's in the books. Also, they asked for perk tests. We done perk tests on both sides of the road and perk tests. Everything came out positive on both sides. The idea of the RA5 is you irrigate it. The only problem with that is that you cannot purchase. I've tried for 12 years to purchase above ground water rights. You cannot purchase above ground water rights because Payson City has bought those all up because they want to build a reservoir up the canyon. So I have no above ground water rights. So being a redneck family, we went and bought some AstroTurf, and we have AstroTurf. If you ever go to Payson Canyon, that's our place with the AstroTurf. Nothing matches up there. The sidelines aren't even the same, but we're pretty redneck. But anyway, that's the only way we could go. We can't irrigate it because every year from May till October, Payson City stops the water in that Petite Neat Creek from that upper pond to the lower pond. They underground it. So there's no water that goes down that Petite Neat Creek on our property. We can't irrigate, we can't, I mean, we'll do anything the county asks us to do that we feasibly can. I mean, they want us to touch RA5, and so we went and got the Mortys, which were nice enough to go with us, which they own property which touches RA5, so they're contiguous, but the property is contiguous to that, so that we thought, well, that would help. The problem is we're surrounded by forest property. We can't, that's something we can't do. We can't touch RA5 only by having the Mortys come in with us, and then we now can touch RA5. So those are things we can't do. We'll do anything the Payson City or the county asks us to do. Just a couple of concerns that the Payson City had. Mayor Wright's concern was that if with more homes up there, you're going to have a lot of power lines come in. We have no power lines. Everything is underground because the county's required that. When we build our homes, everything goes underground, and we have transformers on the things. There's no unsightly lines, and we can't do those anyway because when we get a building permit, you have to do the underground. Mayor Wright was concerned about buses and bus traffic and increasing as you build more homes up there, the bus traffic. There hasn't been a school bus ever up Payson Canyon. There never will be a school bus. Everybody in Payson Canyon takes their kids to school. There's no school buses. So the traffic is not going to increase. I mean, to build 4 homes up there is not going to increase traffic. I mean, if Payson, and we love Payson City, don't get me wrong, I love Payson City, they're great people, but to complain about traffic up the canyon for 4 homes when they're looking at building a reservoir up there that'll increase the traffic much more than 4 homes. We don't want to increase traffic. We just want to protect property. And as a landowner, we're worried about that. We want to protect our property, and we feel like RA5, there's 17 properties up the canyon. Not one of those 17 properties match the CE1 zoning, not one of them. If it's changed to RA5, 12 of the 17 will now match the RA5. So we're just saying as the county grows, we need to say, we ought to probably match really match the zoning that's there right now. I mean, rather than the CE1, no one in the county, nobody in the Payson Canyon matches CE1. So we're saying RA5 is a better match because of all the existing properties. Does that make sense? So that's why we're asking for RA5. We're asking for protection. We're asking for security. We're asking for some way to have the place protected. And it's done a great job. I mean, we have cameras up there to protect it. We're trying to protect it, but it's always nice to have more eyes on the property. We feel good about what the county's asked us to do. We'll do anything they ask us to do that we can. If there's some things we can't do, again, we can't. We can't do those. My son did most of the work, and so if he has some things that.
I had my dad go first because he's been a teacher for years, and he's a lot better colloquially than I ever could be or aspire to be. And he traveled up from St. George. This is, most people at his age on spring break would be off to Hawaii and doing something fun. I've always, my dad and my parents have always been my heroes. Rather than go and do what they want to do, they're coming up here for their spring break because they want to try to help their children, and they love their children. And as he mentioned, I think growth. And I don't know if I shared this during the planning commission meetings, but I made more copies of the photos. It's a timeline of Payson Canyon. I mean, we've lived there we're going on 7 years now. And I mean, I drive past there. I also work for Payson City as a volunteer on fire and ambulance. So, I mean, I'm pretty involved in the area. And to be honest, I was grateful that the Morleys and the Hughes signed up with us because they have the property that it is contiguous, as well as a portion of it is currently zoned RA5. But being in there, and I know they recently had cut an access to their property, with intent to slowly develop it. They do have enough land that they could build one parcel there. But in all honesty, I would love to see, a low density housing that is being forced not only by the growth. Because I've had. Everybody laughs, but I've had multiple jobs over the several years, and I feel the pains also of the county sheriff. I've done 15 years in real estate, and I continue to do real estate, keep my real estate active. But when everybody's flocking to real estate, when the market's great right now, and I'm building homes and making more money, most people are going that route. I'm sort of the idiot that turns the other way, And for the past 5 years, I've worked in corrections. I worked I was an APMP agent, and I managed the offenders there in Payson area. So I know a lot of the illegal activities that can go on and do go on up that canyon. And then as opportunity developed and I obtained more schooling, I have a paramedic. I am a paramedic, so I went for more money. Yeah, but in the same career, because I love helping and serving the public, and I work now full time as a firefighter up in South Jordan. So I understand the need for growth, and when I was selling homes there at the mouth of the canyon, I sold a couple of those homes in Hidden Grove that Payson had developed, and it's sort of, I think we are doing a disservice for the area if we don't open our eyes to the fact that something there needs to occur, because we're bordering 1 mile from my house. They have built homes on 5th acre parcels and pad lots, not even on, just 8,000 square foot lots. These teeny little homes on teeny little parcels 1 mile from my house that often, and they have a walking trail down through it that we would love one day to bring that walking trail further up the canyon. I know plans are there, funding working on, and we'd love to work with and seeing that to come to fruition and just help with the security up that canyon, but also in being on the fire department, I know several times we have responded to children down there playing in the hollow, starting little campfires, starting this there, and especially when there's no water in the creek. No, that is very unnerving, knowing that in a minute that wind could pick up and it can travel a mile in no time flat. And having worked the front lines of fires and observed fires that have happened in our county and in the valley, that road that the Morleys had cut up to their property, I think it's a godsend, because if you look on the other side of that property right there at the mouth where you abut the city and the larger density, it is heavy with downfall trees that are just ready to light up any day. And when that happens, we have a road there as a fire break. It's amazing. I hunt up Spanish Fork Canyon up by Willie Nelson's home, and you can see the road that's there, that exists, that I hunt on. On one side, it's completely burnt to the ground. The other side, it's green and lush and was saved because there was access to that for firefighters to fight that front line and stop that fire. So whether the fire's coming up the canyon at us, I think we need to fortify the boundaries that we're in right now, rather than just say, oh well, it's CE1, it's been CE1, we're going to continue to be CE1. However, nothing conforms to it. And the kicker of it all, and in my presentation I brought, I showed the creek bed there. For the past 7 years, we have observed the water being shut off and routed underground. And in doing that, the creek bed is dying, it's suffering. And I think the moment that you lose control, or that you start to control the natural elements, the critical environment no longer exists, because it can't self-habitate. And so that's where my biggest concern is. Yeah, we do ultimately want to build more homes up there, bring family closer, bring more security up there. But in reality, I think it's just, and this is the best route that we know to go, because we do want to continue it. We enjoy having agriculture up there. We have horses that feed. And I know that typically our residential, our RA5 zoning, it's to support agricultural purposes. I know we do have tall grasses up there, and they grow fast and they grow quick. And we more or less crop rotate our farm between our property in West and Lake Shore. We put horses down there in the winter months to winter, and then we relieve those fields to grow the crops of hay, and then bring them up to the property in the summertime to eat down the heavy grasses that grow that create more fire hazard. And we want to retain the agricultural properties to mitigate some of the fire problems, but also, just all in all, we want to. This is the route that we saw best to continue to develop and fortify the perimeters that we have there with Payson and other things. But that's in a nutshell what I just wanted to put a stamp on with what my dad was saying.
Appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Any additional comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back up here for questions.
I guess to Bryce, how's this different than the Alpine when we did Patterson? I mean, I know if they want to build and they're in a crazy fire zone and stuff like that, then we require the housing to be different. The fire marshal does. They'll require a whole lot can all that not be done in this case? Is it that different? I guess is what I'm really asking.
Maybe I'll let you speak on the Alpine issue.
So the Alpine issue, they were asking for a different zoning. They were asking for a higher density zoning that required a central water system, which includes fire hydrants. This is
On Wayne Patterson's personal property? I mean, on his home. I thought it was just a CE.
I thought you were talking about the rezone. Yeah, he's in the urban wildland interface also, and so he was required to meet certain enhanced construction.
And that's my question. Could we not do that same thing here?
I think they are. They're in the urban wildland interface.
They are in the
So they're subject to that regardless. I think the main issue here is sounds like it's density issue, and generally counties like to see that through the annexation process. And that's
It's not on any annexation declaration at all. I mean, if they've got a planned reservoir, they don't even have a proposal or anything, right?
They don't have, say that one more time.
Then Payson City has no proposal, even though they may have a reservoir.
They don't. It's not in their annexation declaration. I mean, staff sees this as, they seem to want to increase the density, and the applicant's mentioned the fire hazards in there, so it seems a little concerning to staff to increase density in an area that's acknowledged to be a kind of a concern for hazard. And if the desire is to increase the density, they're not far from Payson City. Payson City's, we'd prefer to see density increase in the city rather than in the canyon area. The other thing too, two other points I'd like to hit on this is when someone proposes to take land out of the watershed. Let me say that again. So again, this property has a watershed designation. When you take land remove that watershed designation, one of the policies that the land use ordinance has established is that they submit a feasibility study showing that it's not going to impact the watershed, and it's them doing that's not going to have an impact if they put more septic tanks up in there. So that there was no study submitted by the applicant for that. The other thing too is they're supposed to, if they want to go from the CE1 to the RA5 zone. Oh, go ahead.
How can they have a complete application if we require that study?
It's only a recommendation. Again, the general plan is only an advisory document. Okay. So the other thing too with this is with them wanting to go to the CE1 to the RA5 zone. The general plan says that if you want to go to the RA5, you need to show historic irrigation and establishment of crops, pasture, or orchards in production, and I don't think you'll see evidence of that on the property. So those are some of the.
So what if these got rezoned from CE1 to two CE2 zones and they split them? If there's a natural boundary or whatever.
To the CE2 zone?
Yeah, two CE2s. Because if I remember right, I heard them say they would potentially like 4 houses.
Right.
CE2 zone allows for 2 in a designated area. That's what.
It allows what the CE2 zone does is it allows subdivisions. It allows subdivisions at 1 lot per 20 acres is what it does.
Right.
So.
That would give them basically. So if we created 2, it'd give them 2 homes in 2 areas. That's what I'm saying. I know they're applying for an RA5. Is that something the county that would fit our general plan would be more inclined to be something at this time?
I think if it was limited to 1 home per 20 acres, I think that's more doable. The problem with the CE2 zone is it does open up the potential for increased development. The CE2 zone actually opens the door for some of our densest development in the county.
Well, but a CE1 only allows for 1 in 50.
1 in 50. What the CE2 zone does is it actually paves the way for someone to develop a mountain home development or even more intense, a recreational resort where you can have lots at the rate of you can have a 10,000 square foot lot in a rec resort or a mountain home
But
development.
this county wouldn't approve that unless circumstances change.
Right, and they'd have to have a water system to be able to do that. So they'd probably have to get with Payson City to do that.
Right,
so.
and that's what I mean. At that point, it might be a different conversation, but I just was curious.
So according to staff on this, and as I was reading down through the comments and so forth, it looks like it doesn't fit according to the RA5 parameters is what staff is trying to say.
Correct.
And is there, let's assume that we wanted to find a way to make this work. What would be your recommendation?
To make it work,
Yeah, or to allow for it to work. Make it work is probably a force word, to allow for it to work.
I suppose if you want to rezone it, they in order for them to build up there, one of the obstacles I see up there for them is that they would have to record a subdivision plat to establish more dwelling sites, and then they've got to bring more irrigation water through the subdivision process. So for a 5 1/4 acre lot, and I think most of their lots or their parcels up there are in that range, 6 acres, 5, 6 acres. You need roughly 9 acre feet per lot, and I think they've told you they've had challenges trying to get irrigation water up there on those lots. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge they're going to run into, trying to develop that property. Rather than that, if it gets rezoned, they can go through the subdivision process. It doesn't seem to really fit well with the legislative intent of the RA5 zone, nor does it seem to mesh with the general
But it
plan.
doesn't sound like there's enough water to do it anyway, because based on, again, that's why I asked about Alpine, because what he had to do up there, if we're having these kind of water issues, it doesn't sound like there's enough water in the 88 acres to do what they want.
Right. I mean, there are provisions for reduction of irrigation water that they may qualify for.
With you, but the fire marshal's never going to allow them to build without all those safeguards, because again, it's going to take, I mean.
Yeah, and I guess you'd have to talk to the fire marshal about that. It seems like others have been able to develop in the urban wildland interface as long as they've had built the home with certain materials and met certain requirements. So I'm not certainly going to be one to say that they couldn't meet the wildland urban interface requirements up there. So.
All right, any additional questions? Seeing none, I'll bring it back up here to the bench. Thank you.
And for me, unfortunately, it doesn't feel like we got anywhere to move. I would probably like to see you resubmit it for CE2s, get the water study, get some of those things done to see if it's even possible to do what you'd like to do. I'm definitely open to a CE2, and 4 homes on 88 acres to me is not a large development. I know the county, we classify it that way because our ordinance says 1 or 2 in certain areas, but that would be my preference. Just without the water study, this one's a little harder for me. Otherwise, I'm a yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way when it comes to especially the water up there. I think that's the hurdle. If you could cross that bridge, I think it would be.
Yeah.
It would sit better for whatever purpose, whatever zoning looks appropriate there.
That makes 3 of us concerned about your water supply.
But definitely open. I think all 3 of us, won't speak. We're willing to help you find a way. We really do want to.
All right, I'd entertain a motion.
I move then that we deny the ordinance amended and stated in number 12.
Second.
Is it 14?
14, did I say 12? Yes, thank you. 14. I looked right at it, but I said 12. 14.
All right. I have a motion and a second to deny the ordinance change as stated in regular agenda item number 14. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I'll carry 3-0. We'll move to regular agenda item number 15. And if, Bryce, if you could just give us a quick overview of what this does.
Yeah, this is somewhat of a simple text amendment. This is Bryce Armstrong, Community Development staff. So our ordinance currently requires areas designated as required yards, kind of that coincide with the setback requirements to be pretty much clear and open, and then there's a list of number of exceptions. We've received an application to include as one of those exceptions. Originally, it was just a residential generator, and the applicant originally had intended to kind of mirror some current language we have in our exception clause for a well house, certain size and height limitation. I think staff recognizes the need to perhaps allow these. We don't see this a lot because most of the lots are larger in size, 5 acres, and you have the area to site these things. But in some of our areas, particularly like this area is in Sundance, a CE2 zone. It's got the higher densities, smaller lots. you know, people are building right at their setback line, and staff can appreciate the need, and not only for a generator, but just operational equipment, AC, condensing unit, or any type of other.
Yeah, I spotted that. believe
Yeah,
me.
yeah, so I think that's a good idea. Even pool equipment, we've seen that before. And so staff kind of went through this and worked with the applicant and came up with somewhat of a revision that I think captures what they would like to do and included some of those other things that we wanted to capture, issues, and also cleaned up the formatting a little bit too. I want to apologize, your red line was a little off there. I updated a cleaner one this morning, and I've got some hard copies there, so you can kind of see exactly what's being changed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Any unintended consequence here that you would see having a negative
You know, I
effect?
don't think so. The 4-foot height limit tries to capture, and work with the building official, tries to capture what you typically see in a residential unit. I did a little research online on generators to make sure that captured what most people would use. The concern is to make sure that you're not impacting an adjacent neighbor with maybe noise and other issues, but we have a noise ordinance that would still be in place. And
You might get really close on those if you do a heat pump that put on
Yeah, we kinda
stands.
had that
So that's
discussion.
where you're gonna get really tight, but.
yeah, so.
Right. Perfect. Thank you.
I know the applicant is here. I think he sat through all this
Yes.
meeting. I don't know if he wants to add anything, but
Okay.
if you have any questions for him, he's here too.
Absolutely. Any additional public comment? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the bench for discussion or a motion.
I'm
I've
in
got no
favor of
discussion.
this.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'll move that we adopt the ordinance as stated in number 15 on our regular agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt regular agenda item number 15. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It will carry 3-0. All right, moving onward, looking at our closed meetings, we do not need 20. We will need the other three, 21, 22, and 23. So I'd entertain motions to strike and
You or
set
me?
those.
Sorry, I can't remember. What was the numbers again?
We do not need 20, but we need 21, 22, and 23.
My turn, isn't it? Okay. I'll move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session.
Don't need
You
this
don't
one.
need 20.
Don't need that one.
21?
20, we need to
Don't need
strike
20.
20.
Oh, okay, I was on
You're
21.
you're ahead of us.
I'll make a motion that we
Oh,
strike
sorry.
number 20.
Second.
Motion and second to strike regular agenda item number 20. All those in favor?
Process.
Say aye.
Okay.
Aye, that'll carry 3-0. Now you can go to
I'll make a
21.
motion that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss the sale of real property, water rights, or water shares previously publicly noticed for sale at today's date at this location following the completion of our regular agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve and set the meeting as stated in regular agenda item number 21. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion will carry 3-0.
I'll make a motion that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual or individuals at today's date at this location following the regular agenda item.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve and set the date and time for a closed meeting as stated in regular agenda item number 22. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that will carry 3-0.
I'll make a motion that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss the pending or reasonable imminent litigation at this location following the completion of our regular agenda, and also at this date, today's date.
Second.
And we need to,
no,
with the
and also we
continuation
need-
of that for Thursday morning.
This is gonna be a continuation, meeting to, what was the date on that? Thursday,
March 15th at 10 a.m. in the commission
March.
conference room.
15th at 10 a.m. in the commission
Suite 2300.
chamber,
Commission chamber or conference room?
Conference room.
conference room.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, location as stated in regular agenda item number 23 with a continuation of that meeting as stated. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion will carry 3-0. We now have a work session presentation. This is from the Camp Floyd State Parks proposed transfer of property to the town of Fairfield.
Mr. Garfield's requesting if we can have a switch from number 2 to number 1.
But
If number 1's okay with that.
you okay with that?
Okay.
Okay. All right, Mr. Garfield, we'll take your presentation on EKR and the proposed marketing campaign.
Well, first of all, thank you for making that switch. My name is John Garfield, currently the chair of the Utah Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau. This is a project that we've been working on for at least 18 months, and we're excited to be able to present it to the commission on how we can excite everybody to come to Utah County, experience what we have to offer, as well as for the citizens. We think that Utah County has a lot to offer. And one of the things the Utah Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau is charged with, and that is to promote travel not only from outside of the state and outside of the county, but also within inside the county. So we just have a short little presentation from EKR as they're setting up, and kind of show you what we've gotten to as far as our plan for the additional ask that we have presented to the commission. Prior to that, is there any questions you guys might have? All right. We should have gone after number one as we're setting up.
Let me just mention that we went through a process last year, and most of you are aware of it, that we brought EKR on, and we have Brandon and Stephen from EKR this morning. We met together as a board on March 1st, and they reviewed this presentation, and our board did support it 100%. And we're just excited to share some of the highlights of that with you as hopefully a final process to getting the funding approved for us to move forward.
We already approved the funding. Did we only do a portion so far?
The TAP has recommended it, and we are.
We haven't done.
Yeah, and then a portion of the funding was allotted to us for them to do some of it.
This is based on that first part.
This is true. This is true. And we should, I know I might not get a chance, but Mark's retiring, and we're very proud to have him as a partner in the county. The state park, Stagecoach Inn, and Camp Floyd out there is just an incredible part of the unique offering we have here. So thank you, Mark, for allowing us to be here, or allowing us to step in front of you here.
Are you putting it up on the screen, or?
Yeah. Does it come up on the boards or just?
Well, it should come up there. Mine's on. Turn your monitor.
Let's move from Yosemite to.
So what we're going to roll through briefly here first is some results from research that was conducted. One of the most important things anytime you do a marketing campaign is to make sure that you're speaking to the right audience, and that also obviously that you're saying the right things to them to motivate them. And so there were some different assumptions that were held by a variety of people on the board, by us, and the research was conducted in order to clarify and help direct exactly what the truth was as far as the target audience goes and what they need to hear.
Thank you. So first, diving into our research insights, the full report is almost a 200-page document, which we're happy to share if we need to. But here are a few top highlight things that we'd like to call out. First, as part of our research process, we did an executive workshop where we collaborated with the board. We did an analysis of some existing data, and then we did consumer surveys to household decision makers, or women, mothers, and young adults. And the thing that's really important to know about this is that there were 1,400 respondents, and that gives us a 99% confidence level with a margin of error of about 3.5. Now, for those of you who aren't as statistically geeky as I am, what that means is we are quite confident that what we have, the data we have, is representative of what everyone in the state of Utah and surrounding counties to Utah County and surrounding states thinks, and their motivations and ideas about travel and perceptions of Utah County.
So can I ask you a question on that?
Please.
So where was your respondents from? Where do they typically come from?
We specifically geo-targeted in counties in Utah except for Utah County, and people in surrounding states, because our initial data indicated that these are the people that are going to come to Utah County to help with tourism tax dollars.
Those surrounding states included Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, was it Colorado as well?
So, and then finally, we did a market analysis where we looked at a competitor analysis, consumer, industry, and offerings analysis. One of the big things that we found very early on is that 92% of vacations are planned by women.
Vacations to Utah County, or is that a general stat?
General.
Okay.
Now, honing in very specifically to the audiences that we studied in the survey, spending time with family, relaxing, experiencing something new, and creating memories are the main reasons why Utah Valley target audiences travel for leisure.
So no matter where they're going, those are their main reasons.
Utah Valley target audiences relate the words beautiful, mountain, pretty, family, and Mormon to Utah Valley.
Just out of curiosity, was that like in order? Or is that just in general?
Yes, that was in order. Beautiful mountain. Of those target audiences that had visited Utah Valley in the past, their main motivations for traveling here were to see friends and family, to go out to eat or drink, and to go shopping. Utah Valley stands apart from other destinations by being family-friendly, family-oriented, and family-focused. The research really bore this out. The majority of all of our audiences prefer indirect formal speech with a confident and warm tone in messaging.
Which, might I add, matches nicely with another perception that the Valley has of being a very welcoming place. And so it's great that that type of feeling resonates well with our audiences.
Next, we tested some of our initial messaging with our audiences. We tested our families waiting for yours, explore the heart of Utah, find your happy here, and one valley fits all. And we found that the concept of exploring and finding and happiness really resonated. This particular graphic is with household decision makers. This next graphic is with young adults, millennials. Again, the concept of exploring and happiness really resonated well with them.
It's also interesting to note that a lot of us who live in Utah Valley think that there's a stigma with the term Happy Valley, right? That's a nickname we were given. But we see here from the research that talking about this as a place for happiness is actually something that resonates really well. And I think we even tested the Happy Valley aspect, and that didn't come back as a negative with anybody outside of the Valley.
Next, we looked at a lot of the tourism tax dollars, and we noticed that there's a trend in the total earned TRT over the past 10 years. It's continued to increase. Now, we paired that with this next graphic here, which is a projection of travel expenditures in the United States through 2020. Based on our historical TRT earned and these projections, we're confident that now is the time to capitalize. Though an economic downturn may come in the near future, now is the best time to capitalize on promoting leisure travel in Utah County while the county's TRT continues to grow.
So with that data and other data, we began to help shape the position of the brand within the market of places to go for leisure travel. One of the things that we like to establish is what we call a core essence. It's kind of at the core of everything that the brand is trying to promote. For Utah Valley, definitely for leisure, but also it's nice that this actually translates over to the business side of things as well. Connection. People very much are coming here to connect, in large part with family and friends, but we also surmise that connecting with themselves, nature, culture, the idea of discovering new things in history are reasons that they come here. When we're trying to establish a marketing campaign, we also need to determine what the tone is going to be like for the brand. For Utah Valley, based on the research that we got back, we felt like these were some great things to help establish that tone. The idea of making it come off as welcoming, vibrant, practical, These people are very much budget conscious, so the practicality is a big part of that. Happy, of course, and nostalgia, somewhere where they can form memories with people that they're connected to. These are a list of 7 crucial messages to communicate. Some of these other leisure locations may be communicating. We note those as qualifiers. Others of these are things that help us to stand out more against competing opportunities, and those are labeled as differentiators. So we have in the heart of Utah, experience a welcoming atmosphere unlike any other. Build memories and stronger connections thanks to our family-focused culture. And a thing on the family-focused culture, we may feel reticent that maybe that's not going to resonate with millennials or people who don't have a family. They actually regard the people that they travel with as their own definition of a family. So it even resonates well with a millennial who isn't married. Taking a picturesque mountain vista with lakes, waterfalls up close or from a distance. Get more out of your trip with affordable options that fit your budget. Explore several historic downtowns with a large array of shopping, restaurants, entertainment, and festivals for every taste. Downtowns are specifically a big draw for people, especially historic ones. We know not every city in Utah County has a historic downtown, but many do. Choose from a wide variety of season-specific mountain experiences easily within reach. The proximity of everything is a differentiator from us, especially from things in southern Utah that are a little farther to drive to. And then finally, discover everything you want because it's all conveniently close. So that sets a good foundation. Additionally, to help with that foundation, we have what we call a positioning statement. That says how we stand out from others. For busy people who want to strengthen connections, Utah Valley provides quick family-focused escapes. The heart of Utah does this through a welcoming culture, picturesque mountain vistas, and an array of affordable season-specific experiences that are conveniently close while still fitting everyone's tastes. Discover travel the way it should be, easy, inviting, and memorable. Now, the things that we just went over, these are foundational things. They aren't customer-facing, but they're what the customer-facing things are built off of. What we're about to roll through are some proposed ideas around some customer-facing messages, as well as attention-grabbing tactics that some of them should be employed for helping draw people here. So we'll go ahead and roll through those briefly.
First, we have our family is waiting for yours. And here on the next slide, we have a mock-up of what this might look like when executed creatively in the field.
The next one, and this one, as you'll remember, scored the highest out of the ones that we were able to test. Explore the heart of Utah.
Next, we have Find Your Happy here. This is the message that resonated second highest with our audiences.
Another one that we have here is Stay Close, Grow Close, speaking to those connections.
Next, we have Explore Every Season, speaking to the many different season offerings available here in Utah County.
You know, and for people who are down in Mesa or even some over in Nevada, this is a big deal for them because they kind of experience one season there. Together with this view, the mock-up there. And then finally,
Next Level Family Time, speaking to the family, whatever your family may be, however you define that, but finding that time here.
Great. So the next area that we'll go through is some bold tactics to help grab attention. But yeah, any questions to this point? Okay, great. The first tactic we call a family welcome. Basically, the concept is at an airport or a place of arrival, wrapping a wall. This is very crudely mocked up, but to have a scene where family or individuals could go and stand and and be as if they were part of the scene.
Next, we have perspective point floors. Apologies there. This is one example. This is a sidewalk illustration of people falling in, but something like this that's really attention grabbing and draws people to something that's offered here in Utah County.
So the idea on this one is it would be placed in malls or airports where people can have the feeling that they're on top of Mount Timpanogos or in one of the canyons at the base of one of the waterfalls.
Next is the concept of a hijacked elevator. What this looks like is we take both the outside and the inside of an elevator and make it an experience. And again, this would be placed in a very public setting.
And this would be very attention grabbing because it's be so immersive and people aren't used to experiencing this in an elevator. So the next idea is making use of our residents here, the Utah Valley Insiders app. Surprisingly, there are many residents who don't have much of a clue of the magnitude of opportunities that are available here in Utah Valley. And so creating an application that helps them to discover all of those possibilities, and then also once that has received a wide adoption amongst residents, pushing that to those outside of the state as well.
Next, we have the Faces and Places of Utah Valley. This is a video series that highlights some of the more famous people from Utah Valley.
The next we call a landmark statement. It's making use of a concept that's been used in a lot of other locations where you have giant letters that can be used as a photo opportunity. In the case of Utah Valley, we would suggest rather than doing the name Utah Valley, it would be some sort of a nickname for Utah Valley, possibly the heart of Utah Valley, or the heart of Utah is a nickname.
That's a good nickname. We like that one.
Thanks.
Sweet. Next, we have immersive transit. Many of us have likely seen something like this on the outside of transit, but making it a full immersive experience by having different mock-ups and different advertisements on the inside of transportation.
When you surprise people and put something in a context that they're not used to seeing, it gets them to remember it better and to talk about it. Another idea is using a similar concept of surprising people is what we call minivan invasion. Minivans are forever linked with the concept of families, and so it'd be wrapping a group of minivans and driving them to different locations to grab attention, and having fun messages on those like minivans welcome or we love minivans, and of course a message similar to the next level family time.
Next, we have a family feature. These are movie-style posters that would be posted in theaters to get people outside, to draw them to come to the heart of Utah, to explore, to have next-level family time.
And in addition with that, there's an opportunity to do pre-roll advertising before a movie starts, where we could show an engaging video that helps them capture the idea of what that kind of family time could be like here. This next one, we call it Like You're There. It's particularly for Mesa and Nevada. They have a lot of outdoor water misters, so making use of those and actually putting a big wrap behind them that looks like one of our many gorgeous waterfalls that we have here, and inviting people to come experience that waterfall in person. This is great for engaging the senses, makes it more memorable.
Next, we have a video flood. User-generated content is a really powerful tool to communicate. And in fact, some of the most trusted content that's out there is user-generated content. And so we'd have a video contest. You see both on the left and the right appealing to different people, whether they're more interested in the cultural aspects of Utah Valley or the outdoor adventure components. But we would use this contest and then have these content assets that we can then use.
And despite the number of residents in Utah Valley, there is a bit of a dearth of great content about the valley, photos and video. There's a lot out there, but compared to other locations in Utah where people vacation, we could benefit from a lot more. The final tactic that we have here, we call this could be your view. The idea being that we put one of our fantastic views. There are other places that are complimented for our views, but we definitely get that from pretty much everybody that visits here, talking about the wonderful views. Putting those either in a mall or an airport, and helping people see how close the view is to a shopping area or other things. Or even putting it on the side of a building and letting them know that whatever view they have currently, they could have a better one here. So these are the bigger attention-grabbing ideas and some of the headlines for engaging people. Additionally, with these, we would employ traditional and well proven digital marketing efforts, PR efforts, and other traditional marketing efforts in addition to those. Any questions?
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
We're good?
Thank you. Yep.
All right, we will now come back here to the Camp Floyd State Parks presentation. Thank you for your willingness to work with us.
My name is Mark Trotter. I'm the park manager at Camp Floyd State Park in Fairfield. We are currently working on a new visitor center for the park that will better display the history of that area and of our state as well. Let me hand you a photograph of what our proposals are here. We are working with a couple other partners on this. The city of Fairfield is on board with this and is donating money to it, as is the county. We had hoped to have the whole set of funds to construct the entire building for what we needed, but have hit a block with the legislature with it, which we hope will be resolved next year and should go through as it's passed the steps that we've wanted to get it to get us to this point. What we're wanting to do is, with these funds that we have available right now, since they are available, is start to use them. We want to use those to start the construction of this museum. According to your map right there, you can see our current museum is in between those two parcels of property. On the right-hand side of your sheets there, the museum is really inadequate right now. Our visitation is increasing each year, and we're getting more and more, and with the new museum, it's going to increase it as well, so we needed the bigger building. What the city and the state has proposed to do is that we would like to take some of the state park property that is there right now and donate it to the city of Fairfield. By doing so, we can start that museum. Yet for the first phase, you can see on the next page of what we've been thinking with, it will basically just be the museum. The town of Fairfield has agreed to forego their offices, which they want in the building as well. That's part of their contribution. That they would, for this first phase, let it just be totally museum with it, which we've agreed on as well. And to do that, we would like to put it a little closer to the roadways, basically because it's cheaper to start that way. The utilities are already there with it, where our extended plans further to the west for the main museum will actually be later. There's going to take a little more money and funds to do that. So we want to propose of donating that land to the town of Fairfield so we can start on those buildings, with anticipation of state funds coming in later to finish the other part of the building that we need. This may change the tax code on it a little,
and we just wanted you to be aware of that and to have your approval on that land swap with the city. Once this starts in, the city has purchased 7 acres. It would just be to the right of this map that they will be donating back over to the state parks for the construction of the last phase of that museum. And it's actually a original piece of the Camp Floyd site that will be preserved that way as well. Any questions on that?
No, thank
Okay.
you, Mark.
Looks good. Thank you.
For all your work on this. It's
Appreciate
been
it.
a long process, and I know that you're hanging them up at the end of this month.
Yeah.
So, well done.
Well, very well done. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's been a fun thing to come forward.
Yes,
It's coming
I'm
away.
excited for the opportunities the museum and what you're doing out there will create for the residents here. Get more people to visit us, right?
Yep, will do. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll now turn it to Bryce for some discussion on public open houses to be hosted by the Utah Division of Emergency Management.
Bryce Armstrong, staff. I know it's been a long meeting, so I'm going to become everyone's in the room's best friend and make this really quick. This is just for information, kind of to get out to both the commission and the public about some open houses and an open meeting, a public meeting that the Division of Emergency Management is holding in conjunction with FEMA regarding an ongoing FEMA project that's looked at updating flood insurance rate maps. They've been working on this for a number of years, I understand, and they're getting to the point where they want to invite the public to come and look at the preliminary revisions of these maps. This really affects a property's eligibility for flood insurance requirements, and it kind of relates to certain requirements to build in certain areas related to the flood zone. So just want to take this opportunity to kind of get the word out. We're going to have our public information officer put that out also, and invite anyone who's interested to come to these meetings and to tell their neighbors. So just wanted to take a moment to get that word out.
Perfect. Thank you. Those will be very, very informative, so thank you. All right, that will close our work sessions. We will now entertain any general public comment.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Katie Matheson. I'm the Communications Director with Alliance for a Better Utah. I would like to take a moment to remind this body of the allegations against Commissioner Graves by reading some excerpts from the claimant's initial allegations of the investigation report prepared at the request of the Utah County Deputy Attorney late last year. I will make some small edits for decency and clarity. On May 4th, while riding on a golf cart together, Graves rubbed claimant's legs above her knee and stated, "Don't show if you don't want it touched." On that same date, claimant further alleged that while driving together in Graves' vehicle to a golf event, Graves told claimant about an individual who was fired from her last job due to rumors that she had slept with someone. Claimant commented, "How does that even happen?" Graves replied, "That would be like someone saying, I saw Graves and claimant having intercourse on the golf course." Claimant objected, saying, "Please don't spread rumors about me." While sitting together in a golf cart, Graves told claimant a story about a time he was golfing with a realtor who took a short break from the game to have intercourse with someone on the golf course, and that the realtor returned shortly thereafter with leaves in her hair. While on the putting green, Graves told claimant that he wanted to get divorced and asked claimant if she dated men who are divorced. Leaving the golf event in Graves' vehicle, Graves told claimant that he could get sex anywhere and boasted that women were attracted to the power he has in his position. On April 21st, Graves told claimant that she was not hired for her looks, even though he knows she must have been at previous jobs. On an unspecified date, Graves became hostile to claimant, made claimant's work environment hostile, and made inflammatory, damaging comments about claimant and her work that are not based on actual job performance. And on October 4th, Graves went through claimant's emails. The investigation concludes that the investigator concluded that it is also important to note, based on statements from nearly all of the witnesses, that respondent, which is Graves, is widely viewed as a workplace bully, dishonest, demeaning, intimidating, threatening, explosive, and someone with whom personal interaction is to be avoided as much as possible. We would just like to remind this body that harassment, assault, and retaliation are not appropriate in any circumstance, and perpetrators of such actions must be held accountable. As our nation continues to move forward in breaking the silence on instances of sexual misconduct, we must all commit to creating a better society. Commissioner Graves' abuse of his position of power is unbefitting a publicly elected official. I see he has stepped out, but Commissioner Graves, we call on you wherever you are to immediately resign from office. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any additional public comment? Seeing none, we will close the regular portion of our meeting and move into our closed session. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us through this one.